if you say one more thing about this damn phone, I will shove it through the internet. I've had my NBN has been upgraded. I can now shove physical objects through the camera and I will shove it down your gullet. You cannot tell me you've never had a problem with your Apple phone.
I haven't. Except for the self-made one where I took it in the shower and then the battery almost flew up. We've had that story. If anyone hasn't heard that, I'm not repeating it.
Well, they're meant to be.
Not when you drop them and crack. Not when you drop them and crack the back of the screen and then the water.
You are making excuses. You are making excuses for your inferior product. That's what I'm hearing.
I would just like to say, ladies and gentlemen, I have just upgraded my iPhone. I had a iPhone 14 and I had the big one, the Pro Max, which is like way bigger than this. And I was sitting there thinking about this conundrum of what phone I will upgrade to because it was time. And for anyone that knows, my previous iPhone before this has been through the wars and the battery almost blew up on me, but that's fine. Went and got myself a new one and I have downgraded maybe to a small one. And can I just say, I really miss when phones fit in your hand so perfectly like this.
Oh, yeah,
having a small phone again is like, wow, this is groundbreaking stuff.
I actually agree with you, and I get the Max, the what do they call it in Samsung land? Whatever it is, the Plus, whatever it is, the biggest one, the Pro, that's what they call it, because that's what I am, and it's even for me. I've got decent sized hands, but even for me, it's a bit of a handful to do the whole to be able to touch the top corner of the screen. And they've got these settings where you can hit a button and it'll shrink the screen down to a corner so that your thumb can reach it. And I'm like, well, that defeats the purpose of having a big screen.
Yeah,
like,
what's the point?
I want the big screen. So it is, but the thing is though, it means that I can travel and not have to pull out my laptop as often. So I do appreciate that.
That's how I used to justify it to myself. I'm a photographer. I need the extra real estate. You don't. You really don't.
Okay. But see, the other thing is that I have to wear these now because my arms were getting shorter, and that's the other reason. So can I let you in on a secret? And you promise you won't tell anybody, just between you and me.
I'm here.
So I set up this phone and it all magically downloaded everything from the cloud and it was amazing. And by the way, I'm getting my old phone back because it actually, they've managed to fix it. It's completely working. So I'll get the old phone back and I don't know, have it as a spare. I'm not sure. But I'd already gone out and bought this one because they thought they weren't going to be able to get it back. Anyway, long story. This, I had to change one setting from the old phone.
Right.
And this isn't easy for me to say. I had to go into the accessibility settings and switch it to like a bigger font size and like change a few of the settings for like, make it easier for my eyes to be able to see what's going on the screen, please.
I want to say something so mean, but I can't because I'm not that far behind you.
I'm feeling really vulnerable about this. No birthday has ever bothered me except for, it wasn't a birthday, but it's when I realized that I was closer to 30 than I was to 25. So I was like 27 and a half, 28-ish, somewhere in that range. And I just suddenly realized, hang on, I'm closer to 30 than I am to 25. That's the only time age has ever bothered me. And my age doesn't bother me now, but my eyes and the fact that I now have to know where these are at all times. And I'm now adjusting settings on my phone because my arms aren't long enough anymore. I got to be honest, I'm feeling a bit vulnerable about this. This isn't fun.
Well, you shouldn't feel vulnerable because you have a whole new brand and your set looks amazing. And as G says, congratulations.
Freaking, yeah, I mean, I know you're patting yourself on the back here, but freaking amazing. So for those that, I'm going to pull it up here. For those that haven't seen it yet, Carly made this website. Now, normally I would say something like, this is pretty good for someone who doesn't make websites, but screw that. This is good for someone who does make websites. Like this is just good. So I'm going to bring it up on screen here.
Crap.
Yeah, and then you sent me the invoice for 90, what is it, 87, 90,
no, what million.
That's the
no,
one.
I said 95 million. I saved you a couple of mil.
So it just loads beautifully. And just behaves wonderfully. It's a really good template in terms of being dynamic. Where the width changes when it goes from your phone to being on the computer, all that sort of stuff is just beautiful. It's just perfect. The colors, everything looks fantastic. The way you've got it laid out, the various things that get said at various points in time. throughout the website. Like, you've just done a really, really sensational job with this thing. I'm really proud of it, and the response online has been absolutely phenomenally positive.
Well, that's nice. Shit, I did all right for once. Not bad for a grifter.
Not bad for a grifter. And look, see, Empress Pammy, until recently, I thought that my good side was in the dark with the light behind me. But it turns out, thanks to Carly's amazing Photoshop skills, I do have another good side.
It all comes down to, it's all in the eye of the artist. You see, I painted you with my brush, and you're welcome.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
if it works, it's worth at least 150 million.
Yeah, wow. Just with the bomb thing, has there been any more fallout from that? Can anyone fill me in? Like, has something else?
I'm out of the loop.
Because the thing that I'm frustrated with, and I'm sure most of you guys are too, is that we have one of these moments where you just go, this is outrageous. Like, I've had enough. This is the government corruption, all the things. And we had it for 24 hours. And everyone's like it's gone crickets, quiet. Is anyone asking for there to be follow-up? Are there any heads rolling? Has anyone had to step down?
But this is the thing. There is so much going on. There is so much waste. I'm mindful. It's a different thing, but it's kind of the same thing. You remember when Pfizer tried to bury all their documents relating to the mRNA jabs for, what was it, 70 years, 75 years, whatever that was. And then they lost a court case and they were forced to release it all. And so what they did instead was they dumped so much documentation that they hoped that the truth would be buried in it. And it's a little bit of the same thing when there is so much waste happening in so many different directions. People are asking what happened, who got bombed. We're talking about the Bureau of Meteorology website. Sorry, no one got bombed.
Sorry, the actual bomb, BOM.
BOM, yeah. So it's like when it's coming at you from so many different directions all at once, you kind of get overwhelmed. It's impossible to make a difference. You can't move the needle. But there's also this thing called compassion fatigue. It's a particular problem when it comes to like nursing professions and doctors and these sorts of people, where they're around people in pain so much and they're in a hurry, they're under pressure, and they've got their own lives and their own problems going on, that they lose sensitivity and compassion for people who are experiencing whatever it is that they're experiencing. And there's a desensitization that happens to us where our money's being wasted in so many different directions all at once that we've kind of become desensitized to that now. And you're right, people are moving on pretty quick.
Yeah, I think that's where, there's a lot of that. I think fatigue in general. I mean, I'm sure you saw what I called myself today. I am suffering from existential fatigue, but I think that's kind of their MO as well. Like, the government, it's coming into Christmas. They're going to slam through all this last minute stuff. So hopefully that we won't pay attention. All these reports, anything that's like over budget, that hasn't been done correctly, or anything sinister, they just want to slam in there, knowing full well that everyone's tapped out. Like, cognitively, we're done. We're exhausted. We're tired. We're done. Sorry.
Can you imagine the kind of document dump that is going to happen this Christmas? They always do. There's always a document dump. There's always a bad news dump during the, just before Christmas, just before New Year's, when no one's paying attention. Most of the journos are off work. No one's reading the news anyway. Can you imagine this year just how bad that's going to be? I plan to be on holidays. I'm going to be part of the problem. I'll be away and I won't be paying attention to it, but I'll have a look when we get back. But I dread to think, if the stuff that we know about is the stuff that they're willing to talk about, what's the stuff that they're saving up for that?
Sadly, I do think it'll be bad. And the issue that results from that is that how do you get people to feel more outraged or more upset? Like, they're already burnt out. People are burnt out, not just from politics, just life at itself at the moment. Like, life is unfolding for us all so rapidly. There's so many things simultaneously that we need to keep going. So many balls up in the air, I guess you could say. That's the better analogy. And then you throw in things like this.
Agree more. So many balls up. Could not agree more.
And, and what happens is you get to a point where you're like, okay, control the controllables. I can look after my family, my own job, the government stuff, you seem to not care. And I think, unfortunately, that sort of is the default reaction to Aussies. And that's why we actually end up in this position, because we're tuned out, we're apathetic, we don't think that we can control it. And then it just keeps going. It's like this self-fulfilling prophecy. It just keeps getting worse. But
Yeah.
I have become, well, I shouldn't say I have become, I have been this for a while now. I am a full-blown accelerationist because I'm of the opinion that, and I don't wish this upon people, by the way, I don't wish people to struggle, but I feel like without it, it will never get better because we can't just put a band-aid on it at this point. It needs to be a complete abolishment of all of this bureaucracy, this red tape, this middle management crap. And that never happens unless something is the catalyst that makes this fall over. I don't know what
Carly,
that is.
you're not an accelerationist. I'm listening. I'm hearing the dog whistle, the silent dog whistle. You said struggle. You're a Marxist. Only Marxists talk about the struggle. It's the great struggle. Yeah.
All realists.
Well, yeah.
No, yeah, that's my whole thing. I've been a closet Marxist this whole time.
Whole time.
You found
Playing
me
the
out.
long game, Carly. I mean, respect. I'll tip my hat to that. You've been playing the long game all this time.
Almost 39 years of pretending I'm a capitalist. But no, I just in conversations with people, not necessarily about politics. It is fatigue. That is the name for it at the moment.
Yeah.
And I think, sorry, go.
This wasn't planned at all, but I think it's worth mentioning because there's a lot of people who are going to be resonating with what you're saying right now. They're kind of like, yeah, it is too much. I do need to look out for my areas of responsibility, the things that I can actually control the controllables, as you said. And it's probably worth me mentioning that early next year, it'll go on sale in January and it'll happen probably early in February, although you and I haven't actually settled the dates on this yet, Carly. We're bringing back my masterclass, my Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass. And I did that originally in 2024. Yeah, mid 2024, because of the number of people who were feeling overwhelmed at the time. And the very first week deals with that. So each week has a different focus. I'm not going to go through all of them because we're not prepared for it right now, but I'm going to be repeating basically the same structure. It will be updated, but it's basically the same. The first week is about focus. And the key principle in there is to realize that every yes has a no attached to it and every no has a yes attached to it. So every time you say yes to something, it's consuming resources. It's consuming time, money, focus, emotional energy, whatever it is. And therefore you are unable to say yes to something else later. So because you said yes to this thing, there is a no that is going to come later. And if you're running out of time and I don't have time for all the things I need to do, you need to go back and look at what did you say yes to? If you're being forced to say no to things that you know you shouldn't be saying no to, they should be a higher priority. It's not that you need to say yes to that thing, it's that you need to say no to the other thing further upstream. And the reverse is also true. By saying no to the things upstream and having your focus and your priorities set and knowing what matters, you open up all kinds of opportunities for yeses that had never been possible for you before, things that you didn't know you were missing out on. So that's just a taste of one. That's a small part of one of the weeks of that. But I think you're probably right. There's a lot of people that are going to be feeling this. And so we'll have to put our heads together, Carly, and figure out sort of the timeline and how we're going to do that and when we're going to do that. I capped it at 50 people when I did it last year, and it sold out. All 50 people, all 50 spots were taken. And I offered everyone a refund, money back in the second week. If you're not happy in the second week out of the 6, 100% money back. And not a single person took me up on that offer. And every single person came back with fantastic feedback. So I think we probably need to run that again, Carly, next year. And give people sort of, I guess, the structure and the mindset. It's called the Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass. It's to help. I mean, people have seen what I've achieved this year, and I'm going to say what we've achieved because you were a key part of achieving it, Carly. But I went from a standing start basically at the start of this year. In January, I said I'm getting my game on and I'm going for it. By March, I'd figured out what I needed to do. By April, I'd started implementing it correctly. By June, I was putting on a team in the Philippines. In June, you and I signed a deal for you to do the rebrand, and you followed that through over 6 months. In 1 year, the amount that can be accomplished is phenomenal when you get your head in the game. And so that's really what we want to be talking about next year.
Well, something that I want to focus on, and I hope you guys in the chat can focus on this too, because last week we kind of touched on it. I put up that reel about the word aesthetic instead of aesthetic. And I had a mixed reaction, right? Like, and sure,
I was a part of the mix. I'll be honest. I was a part of the mix.
And there's always two sides to an argument, and I knew that. But what I was kind of really sad about was more so people who were saying, oh, like, this is cringe, or like, oh, you're reaching, or get over it. And what kind of frustrates me about where we're at is collectively everyone has accepted mediocrity. We're just so
Yeah.
okay with it now. We are so okay with like shitty behavior, shitty landscapes, shitty areas, shitty government, shitty behavior, shitty people, that we sort of go, and again, I keep saying the word apathy, because what we've had for like the last, I'm going to say maybe 20 years, I call it the participation ribbon generation, where they were told that mediocre was good enough. Just as you are is perfect. But that's crossed over into a lot of adulthood as well now. So we have people going, oh, it's fine. It's just enough to go today. Like, we don't need to do anymore. It's not my job. I finish work at 5:01. Like, I'm out of here.
Yeah.
And I get it. And because the first thing people will say to counteract that argument is, oh, well, we get exploited. We're done with, the big evil corporations exploiting us. I'm like, yeah, that's a really superficial way of looking at it, because realistically what you're saying is you don't want to put a second more effort in than required. That is socialism. That is how socialists behave, because they don't want to have to do anything. They want it to all come down from above. They expect someone else somewhere else to generate the wealth and then redistribute it to us.
Yeah.
And so when we talk about socialism taking over Australia or having its renaissance in the Western world, we need only look at ourselves and how we have accepted mediocrity. That is actually what's at the core of it. Because if we weren't mediocre, if we actually cared and held ourselves accountable, then we would be striving to do things better. And I say this before, I keep talking about chicken in the noodle aisle. That's how it starts. If you're one of those people that's too lazy to put your shopping trolley back, guess what? You're probably the person that's too lazy to pick up the toilet paper that you left in the thing that you just fell off. And you probably didn't turn the tap off all the way. And you probably left your food on the table in the food court because that's someone else's job. And you probably parked crooked so that the person next to you couldn't get in the parking space. Do you know what I mean? Like, this is a chain reaction of things. And it sounds like hyperbole, but when you look at this and start to map it out and go, everyone's doing the absolute bare minimum and no one cares, are you surprised that we live in the world that we live in today, realistically?
Yeah, 100%. And it's amazing. Thank you, by the way, for bringing up some of that stuff, because the alcoholics were really drying out in the comments there.
Venezuela, Nayab Bukele, masters. I haven't said masters for like a month. Sorry,
I know. It's been a tough time for us. My liver nearly resigned with it. It's just such a lack of action for it. It was, my goodness. But this, I would. No, I wouldn't. I'm sorry. Let me talk this through with you, because my brain went in one direction and then another thread of my brain went, no, hang on, that can't be right because of stuff. So let me work this through with you. One of the issues here is the demoralization. And I don't mean demorals as in a lack of morals. I mean the that comes, we see this in workplaces where they've got a horrible boss and no matter what they do, it's never good enough. And ultimately it's why try? When you talk to people that came out of Soviet countries, they speak of, and Alexander Solzhenitsyn talks about this, the demoralization, the demotivation, the why bother. Now, I don't think that captures the entirety of what we're talking about here. I think there's more to it as well. But there is that element of that. And I think what we're certainly seeing for, I would argue in Australia, the portion of the population that has come to believe, rightly or wrongly, that they will never get on the property ladder, I think there's a large degree of from those people. There is a large degree of demoralization. And I say that only in partial blame. I think we are all responsible for our attitudes, but also it's not entirely their fault that our property market has been made as broken as it is. So I have some sympathy for it. But I think it's very, very difficult for people to pull themselves out of a funk like that, when the reality is you live under a system that, like the communist systems, the Soviet systems, really does make it almost impossible for I was going to say impossible to get ahead. It's not impossible to get ahead. It's a lot more difficult to get ahead than what it should be in Australia.
Yeah. There's a lot of things all happening at once, and it's hard to sort of point to one singularity. You got to think as well, like, I shit on Gen Z a lot, and it's not because I don't like them. I
don't want to know what kinks you're into. What you and G get up to when you visit Abby Chatfield and her boyfriend. It's not a topic of conversation.
I'm not Amber Heard, man. Slow down, relax. Scat's not really my thing. Anyway,
relief. We'll stick with rosebudding.
This is.
We're 20 minutes in and it's already gone wrong. Just embrace it, Carly. It's inevitable. It's the Oddcast. If we don't have technical problems, we're going to end up having deeply inappropriate conversations. It's one or the other.
What was I going to say? What before you said all of those things, remind me?
You shit on Gen Z all the time.
Okay. So I've actually just made a video around Abby Chatfield's boyfriend. So guys, if this is the last time you see me, it's probably because one of her sycophants has taken me out. I'm in a body bag somewhere in a creek and decomposing. But what I wanted to say is, like, I'm hard on Gen Z, as you should be. As the generation above me was hard on me, and as the generation before them was hard on them. You need to be hard on people. And it's not about like mocking them or hating them. It's not that. It's hang on a minute, get yourself in line. It's kind of a way of, like, in a weird way, you think about community parenting. Back, eons ago, you had they say the village used to bring up the kids, right? Like everyone played their role. Now it's very much for a time it was just the nuclear family that was responsible, and now it's basically the state, and for a small part, the school system. And so it's an obligation, and I would argue this, it is an obligation to instill in the generation below us some kind of value system, because they're not getting it anywhere else. And so, the other day when I said the aesthetic thing, I instantly had someone in our chat going, "Oh, Carly, you're not perfect either." I know I'm not. Of course I'm not. None of us are. But kindly, people around me will go, "Oh, I think you said that wrong," or, "Oh, that's not actually how you do that," or, "Actually this." Guess what, guys? That's how you fucking learn. How else do you learn? Sitting there and keeping your mouth quiet until it's perfect, that doesn't help anyone. And so when I come down on Gen Z for the way they speak or their silliness or, their embrace of socialism, it's out of a big sister kind of capacity. I'm looking at them going, you actually don't know what you're talking about. You are morally wrong. And I am going to instill in you some wisdom from someone who's been on this earth a little bit longer than you. But apparently you can't do that with Gen Z. They are deeply, deeply offended by any form of critique.
Now, we do have a bit of news to cover before we just sort of end up just going down the rabbit hole of just whinging about every generation but our own. As much as I do enjoy that,
I'll whinge about mine all the time.
Firstly, thank you to the super chats. Paz to Wheels says, "Very happy for you both. Well done. Have a coffee." I think that's in relation to the rebrand. So thank you, Paz. We do appreciate that. Now,
thank you.
The big topic that the news is all talking about, and I think some of them are really missing the point here, is the big buzz around One Nation, obviously rising in the polls very quickly, and specifically Barnaby Joyce and what he's doing. I went on a bit of a deep dive on this today. I was catching up. I didn't do any work at all over the weekend, which was nice. And so I'm kind of catching up on this story and going through it. And everyone's talking about Barnaby Joyce as though he's going to go for the lead Senate seat in New South Wales for running under One Nation. If he was doing that, I don't think the Liberal Party and the National Party would be as worried as they are. It's entirely possible. It's entirely possible that that's what they did. That's what he's going to do. It's entirely possible. I want to talk through an alternative scenario, and it takes a bit of background. This is going to require a bit of conversation here.
With yourself or with me?
With you and with the audience. I'm interested in people's thoughts and comments on this as well. Am I onto something here or not? Here's the thing. So the media are writing off, or some media are trying to write off Barnaby Joyce as a has-been who's desperate for a new political home before he's relegated to the dustbin of history. Well, he's only 58 years of age. He is a former former deputy prime minister. We don't have vice deputy prime ministers. A former deputy prime minister of Australia for actually, I think it was 4 years under two different prime ministers, Turnbull and Scott Morrison. He is one of the most highly credentialed and qualified politicians that we have, love him or hate him. The other interesting thing about him is the degree to which he's sorted his shit out since a lot of his scandals. So he's been a heavy drinker. He's been caught up in all kinds of nonsense and scandals and all sorts of stuff. And yes, people who really hate him, he's given you some good reasons to hate him. I get that. But he's also he's also not there. He's not that person anymore. Right, he has moved on in a very. You can see it in
I know it's weird coming from my mouth, but you have to afford some of these people grace. Like, I appreciate humility in people, and expecting that politicians have never made a mistake or done something stupid or outrageous is ridiculous. We all fall down at different points. coming back with a little bit of humility, I actually really respect that in people.
Yeah, and when you look at him now, he's lost a bit of weight. His skin's cleared up because he's clearly not drinking anywhere near as much as he used to. You can't hide that. If you're drinking as hard as he used to drink, you look like he used to look, right? And he looks a lot better than that now. So it's very clear that he has sorted a lot of crap out. However, the idea of him being a has-been is interesting because from the Liberal National Party's point of view, that's what they want him to be. And here's why. He did not change from being the National Party person that he joined. When he joined the National Party decades ago, it was a very different place to what it is now. He hasn't changed. The party has changed underneath him. Now, he's done some things I haven't liked. He, for example, was part of the team that tried to sell net zero by 2050 when he was the deputy prime minister going into that election. And like he's been on the wrong side of a number of these issues. He's not perfect, but he's also been on the right side of a number of issues. And he's been one of the quickest to come around to the right side of a lot of issues. So his instincts are very clearly set in the Nationals Party of old. But the Nationals Party aren't that party anymore. One Nation are now the Nationals Party of old. And so One Nation seems like a logical fit for him, and they view him very differently. The Nationals view him as the has-been that they want to get rid of. He's a relic from the past, not only because he used to be the deputy prime minister and he's not anymore, but also because he stands for the values that the party used to represent and doesn't anymore. From One Nation's point of view, they're looking at him going, well, he actually represents the values that we want. And he fills a really important gap in their lineup. And this is the theory that I'm getting to. My theory is, this is not a prediction, but my theory is that he's not going for the Senate. My theory is that he's going to run for One Nation in the lower house seat of New England, which is the seat that he's held for a long time under the Nationals. He holds it by about a 2-to-1 majority, 2 votes to him, 1 to the Labor Party alternative. Now, the Nationals will run against him. If he runs as One Nation, the Nationals will run a candidate against him. And I can't be sure how that contest would work out, but I reckon Barnaby Joyce would fancy his chances pretty well in that contest. So here's my thinking. The media seem to think that One Nation want him so that he will run as their lead Senate candidate in New South Wales to guarantee that they'll win that Senate seat. But if they're polling 15 to 18%, they're getting that Senate seat. They just got a New South Wales Senate seat at the last federal election, and their polls have been improving since then, right? I don't think they need a Barnaby Joyce to get them another senator. Now, if Barnaby Joyce goes into the Senate and he pads out their Senate crossbench, all the rest of it, that's nice. They could end up being the Greens, holding the balance of power in the crossbench, and that would be a big improvement over the current situation where it is the Greens that hold that. But I don't think that's what they're playing for. I think that Barnaby Joyce actually believes that the reform type of movement is possible in Australia. And I think this is, I'm speculating heavily here, but I think he's going to run lower house New England seat because they actually believe that they can create the kind of momentum. And I don't know. Let me know in the comments. Do you guys know what I'm talking about when I talk about the reform movement? What's happening over there in the polls is extraordinary. We are looking at a situation where not only are reform going to become a serious contender, they are going to wipe the floor. They are going to have a 2-to-1 majority of seats in the British Parliament. It's incredible. Now, if that's the moment in time that One Nation are on, but they don't have a potential prime minister in the lower house, then they shoot themselves in the foot because they get all this momentum and yet they've got all rookies in the lower house, because typically what these parties do is they run rookies in the lower house because they're not going to win. But what if you are going to win? What if you've got momentum? What if it is your reform moment and you're not ready for it? You don't have a potential prime minister in the party. And here's the thing, the prime minister has to come from the lower house. The prime minister cannot be a senator. So I think that the problem that Barnaby Joyce solves for One Nation is that they're sitting there going, I think we have an opportunity for a reform style moment here. And we don't have a prime ministerial candidate running in the lower house. I think that's the problem that he actually solves for One Nation. I think they've got the New South Wales upper house seat already stitched up. I don't think they need a Barnaby Joyce for that. I think they need him in the lower house. That's my theory. Now, I just seen someone say that you can have a PM sitting in the upper house. The PM has to be a member of the lower house, has to be a member of the House of Representatives, and is elected by the popular vote, the popular support of the House of Representatives. So no, a senator cannot be the prime minister.
I I don't know what their play. I wouldn't pretend to know what their play is, but it's interesting because I watch the news cycle quite closely. Obviously, now that we do this, I look at X every day. I look at the news websites every day. I'm always looking at I'm trying to get a temperature of what's going on. And given the amount of hit pieces coming out about Pauline, I would say they genuinely perceive her as a threat at the moment. So she was just down in Melbourne over the weekend. She was at the March for Australia, or I'm not sure what the protest was called, but she was at the protest on the weekend. She only spoke for a couple of minutes, but that little stunt, right? I call it a stunt, and her burqa stunt. They are more powerful than having like a payman or I can never say her name, Faruqi, getting up in Parliament and delivering their progressive sermons. They don't respond to, like Aussies don't respond to that unless they're like, progressively hardwired. What people respond to is that quick moment of like, wow, they were one of us. And I've said this before about Trump. The reason Trump won the presidency is, regardless of the fact that he's a billionaire, people recognized in him attributes that they themselves had. Pauline's much the same. Pauline is a bit messy. She's a little bit bogan, but that is half of Australia. And the thing that people seem to underestimate is that, yes, we have all our inner city wankers like every country has, but a large percentage of the Australian population are just regular people out in the regional areas. We have these little progressive enclaves of certainly, like especially in Melbourne. But the more you go out away from the capital cities, those people are looking at Pauline going, well, she speaks like I speak. She's real.
Correct.
And so, this is why I was so bothered by the Liberal Party replacing Brad Batten with Jess Wilson. That is everything people despise about the Liberal Party. The silver spoon, uppity, Ivy Tower, a private school girl kind of attitude. And look, to be fair, she's riding the coattails of a little bit of an upwind at the moment. She's up in the polls, so that's great. Whether or not she can sustain that, we'll wait to see. But what I think Australia is desperate for is someone who is a little bit messy, someone who isn't necessarily polished. I mean, Anthony Albanese is certainly not polished, but what we're looking for in an opposition is someone who isn't smug. I mean, Malcolm Turnbull, for example, can you remember him? I hated him as the Prime Minister. He was crooked as. And, Johnny Howard, I know people are divided on Johnny Howard, but the reason a lot of people love Johnny is, remember he used to stroll around in his tracksuit? And
he goes for a jog.
Those little things are endearing. Now, again, you might not like their policies, you might not like their politics, but what I think the average punter is looking for is someone that represents them. And at the moment, if you're talking like broad Australia, not the inner city enclaves, Pauline's probably the closest thing we've got.
Well, Exposure says MAGA has Orange Man, One Nation needs Beetroot Man. And look, to Barnaby's credit, like he was given a lashing in all of the cartoons, all the One Nation cartoons, and yet he's still obviously on friendly terms with them. But I wouldn't compare Barnaby Joyce to an Orange Man. I would compare him to Nigel Farage. Nigel Farage, according to traditional political wisdom, is completely unelectable. He hasn't been to the right schools. He doesn't have the right connections and power. He can't attract the right kind of donors and money. He's got, he's out there smoking his cigarettes and not hiding it. He's doing all the things that you're not supposed to do. And on current polling, he is, if an election were held in the UK today, he would romp it in to be the next UK Prime Minister. I mean, historic result, unlike anything ever seen before in the entire history of the Westminster system, right?
Yeah.
And I think Barnaby Joyce ticks a lot of the same boxes. And you're right, he is a bit of a warts and all. He has been humiliated on the Australian, on the national stage. He's been humiliated because of his own actions, because of his own stupidity, because of his own drinking problems. And yet he's still here. And we all have ended up, or I think a lot of us have ended up with this kind of almost affection for kind of like, I get it. Okay, no, I haven't necessarily done the same thing, but I kind of get it,
Yeah.
And he's someone who when he tells you what he believes, you believe that he's telling you the truth. You can say that he's wrong, but it's a lot more difficult to say that he's a liar. Whereas someone like Albo, can say all the right things, and you're like, yeah, but do you actually believe that, or are you just saying that because that's what you think you have to say?
Yeah, we'll have to wait and see, but I definitely feel like there is a somewhat of a pressure cooker situation in Australia at the moment, particularly politically, because I bring back, not to take away from Pauline, but a couple of weeks ago we had that Victorian MP Sonia Terpster, who came out and said verbatim that the pothole that took out 28 cars, because she didn't see it with her own eyes, it's not real, and it was some kind of 3AW conspiracy. Now, I have on good authority that went down like an absolute ton of shit in Parliament, and her party were very unimpressed with that statement. But that level is disdain, that kind of like out of touch delivery. You got to remember, these are people who are hardline Labor people who are hearing that going, you've completely lost it. You are so detached from reality. And, and now G and I play this game like we're driving around and like, oh, pothole, figment of your imagination. Like, it's not real. Imagine saying that. And I was driving down Cheltenham Road, for anyone who knows this area, and it was like playing dodgem cars with the potholes, and they weren't massive ones, but there was enough there that the cars like and I'm sort of like, shit, you can't avoid them. You're driving over them. I'm fine because I've got a big car, but for a sitting MP to come out and try and gaslight the public, and then of course you've got
ridiculous.
Albo gaslighting us, you've got Jacinta Allen gaslighting us. So these guys are so smug, and I guess what I'm trying to say is the Labor Party feels, well, I think up until a certain point, they were very smug and they were very content because they knew they had the balance of power well and truly. And they were kind of riding that upwing of the progressive woke movement. Now that that's well and truly gone, like peak woke is done, that pendulum is swinging back slower than I would like in Australia, but it's definitely swinging back. Now they kind of have to really run on these policies. And a lot of these policies are progressive, they're socialist, and they're tied into things that defy objective reality. So when you've got someone saying that a trans woman has no biological difference to a woman, and that there's no potholes, and that Melbourne's the safest city on earth. I mean, you can get stabbed in the heart and have your lung collapse, but it's still the safest city. Your average punter is looking around going, what? And I know I've said this before, and I know it's a bit of a stretch, but I look at what's going on now as like that lead up to the American Revolution and the French Revolution. Again, I'm not saying everyone's going to go grab bayonets and roll out the guillotine, but there is something of a cataclysmic event coming.
This is Australia, Carly. We're going to grab the barbecue poker.
The cattle prod.
That's right, the cattle prod.
I don't know what that means. Like, I know I watched something on your video today, and you were talking about what a civil war or something would look like in 2025. I can't remember why you were saying this, but
gosh, that must have been an old video. I don't even remember.
Can't remember. It was something, and civil war by today's stretch is not one of gun violence. It's a digital war. And so we are in a civil war. We're already divided. We're already polarized. You've got people like Karen, and of course you've got, what's happening offshore as well. What happens now is, how do we come together collectively, the people who uphold common sense, and how do we win the ideology war? That's where the war is. And the politics will flow downstream from that, I believe.
Well, it is an interesting one. Goodness, that was a simple word to have so much trouble with.
Use your words, get them out.
Because it has been said, and I hold it to be generally true, in the past, people had to fight for their freedom against foreign countries that wanted to come in and take over their country. Today, we have to fight for our freedom from our own government, which has more in common with the governments of foreign countries. So we, the people, have far more in common with the common man of another country, even if they don't speak English and they don't share anything else culturally. They eat different food, they worship a different God, etc. The common people have more in common with each other than the leaders do. And of course, these days, travel and communication is much, much easier than what it's ever been before. So we can encounter other cultures much, much more easily. But also, these leaders can form a cabal and a clique much, much more easily. In Europe, go back 200 years, yes, European kings and royal families saw a lot of each other. There was that whole sort of class and caste that they had. But European and Asian leaders didn't. European and leaders in the Americas didn't so much. certainly not the South Americas. Whereas today they do. They're able to form a club, and they really have. This is what things like the World Economic Forum facilitate, is this kind of ongoing club where there's conversations that happen from Davos to the G7 to the this to the that. There's these conversations that are ongoing as they do the circuit of all the different meetings where they all catch up and they form this club. And to become a member of the club, you simply have to be able to, or be willing to play the game, to do what you're told and whatever is required of you within the context of your system. In Australia, on the Labor side of things, that means be a union rep, get a law degree, work your way up as a staffer, and then get pre-selection for a safe Labor seat. On the Liberal side of things, it's not much better, right? And then if you play those games and you get that pre-selection and you get elected, you end up as a minister with some sort of a portfolio. It doesn't matter which one, doesn't matter if you know what you're doing, doesn't matter if you can add anything to it. None of that's relevant. You just get the position because now you get to get on a plane and become a part of that club and jet set around from those for those meetings. Now, the most obvious example of that, in my view, is Daniel Andrews. Right. He played that game to a T. There's still this unanswered question that not a lot of people seem to still care about, but I think it's a really important question. And I think at some point in the future, something is going to happen and everyone is going to suddenly realize that this was a really important question that everyone ignored at the time. Why the fuck was he in the family photo alongside Xi Jinping, Kim Jong-un, Vladimir Putin, and a bunch of other current heads of state? He is a former head of a subnational state. All of the others were the current heads of actual countries or their wives. Right? That's who was in that photo. And there's this one dickhead up the back who doesn't tick any of those boxes. Why was he there? He played the game. Whatever deal he did is still ongoing. That is still working itself out. Whatever he sold, whatever he offered, we don't know. And I have a sneaking suspicion that is going to suddenly become a very relevant question at some point in time. But just to finish that point, he paid his dues and he joined that club. And he has far more in common with Xi Jinping and Kim Jong-un and all of the others than he ever had with the common Labour Party member or the common worker, the common union member. They are their own club. And today we are defending and protecting ourselves against our own government, not against foreign countries.
Yeah, and that's why I always get so confused with these young ones who think that the Labor Party has their best interest in heart. You know, to see Daniel oversee us during COVID and, you know, not to revisit that, but we know what happened there. And then in just a very short amount of time, like you said, he's over in China standing in a photo with Putin and Kim Jong-un, you know, who everyone knows, like everyone has accepted that these people are totalitarian dictators. You know, we're like sponsoring a proxy war against Putin at the moment with the Ukraine thing. And we look at North Korea as like the isolated, you know, communist enclave, right? So we accept that to be true as Australians. And yet those who are diehard Labor supporters and now the Green supporters are defending that. And it's very difficult to hold these two thoughts at the same time. 1 minute, you're upholding him as like, you know, he's the right person for our democracy, because that's something that the left love to talk about, democracy. But in the same breath, you've seen with your own eyeballs, he's standing on a platform with literal dictators, which up until that moment, universally are accepted as dictators. And what I find utterly bewildering is that cognitive dissonance knows no bounds. They're still able to somehow wormhole around it and justify it. Like, what's his name on X? Pirate Man, Lisa Wilkinson's husband.
Pirate Pete.
Pirate Pete.
Not Pete Evans.
Peter Fitzsimmons? Fitzgerald?
I know him as Peter Fitz. So, yeah, we'll leave it at that. Peter Fitz, yeah.
Yeah, him and Mike Carlton, one of the two of the old boomer trolls on X, came out in defense of it. And I just thought to myself, how on God's green earth can you say that with a straight face? You know, knowing what you guys supposedly stand up for and all the rhetoric that you guys espouse on X, and then you can justify that. And that's what I mean about this fatigue. Because, you know, I mean, it comes at us like a tsunami, because we we observe this all digitally. So every time you refresh your feed, you're getting a whole new dose of this crap. And so it's exhausting. And that's why, like, you know, when I read the comments, people are like, thank you so much for this podcast. It helps me keep up to date with what's going on. And I'm like, God, we're only we're only like circling the very rim. There's so much more that we can't capture.
But let's stay away from those sorts of metaphors, Carly. That's those sorts
sorry,
of that can go a long way wrong
there.
very quickly.
But you know, I was going to say, like, you know, when it comes to all this sort of stuff, you got to wonder how many more thoughts can people hold and still, you know, bow down to the establishment. You know, like.
Yeah. So the expression that I have to remind myself of time and time again is that there is it is never easier to be wrong than when your ability to earn a living depends on you being wrong.
Yeah.
That's I've bastardized the phrase. It's said better than that. But essentially, if you being wrong is a necessary prerequisite to keeping your job, or to, for example, getting a jab and being allowed to walk free, or getting government contracts, or these sorts of things, well, yeah, of course you're wrong. And no one's going to be able to change your mind, because your mind wasn't made up on the basis of evidence. It was made up on the basis of convenience. I'm mindful of there's a comedian, James Donald Forbes McCann, four-name name, yes. James Donald Forbes McCann. He did a wonderful routine that I actually used and referenced in one of my keynote speeches that I've done at conferences over the years, where he talks about how, and he's a comedian, he's joking about, I don't know what his status is with any of this stuff, but the joke is, I wish that I had not gotten the vaccine. I wish that I was the kind of person that said no. But it turns out I'm the kind of person that says yes. All they have to do is tell me that I can't go to the pub for a week, right? Yeah. And that's his joke, and people laugh along, and there's more to it, and he builds it out, and he's a wonderful comedian. He delivers the lines well. He is genuinely funny, and I hope one day to see him live. But you think about the grief contained in that concept, the regret, the self-respect that is lost in someone who says, all they had to do was tell me that I couldn't go drinking with my mates. And I did a thing in order to be able to go drinking with my mates that I actually, in my heart of hearts, didn't want to do. And he goes on, obviously he's being a comedian. He extends the joke. He talks about how, you know, forget about hiding Anne Frank. Like, he would have been like, she's up there. I saw her, you know, and recognizing in himself that he would have been that person. And he's hilarious, funny, but the grief of that, the loss of that. And I live on the other side of that, where when all of that, and I don't say this to boast, I don't say this to sort of rub it in the face of anyone who made different decisions, but this is the reality of, I live with the knowledge that when that test came, I passed it. I proved that I was on the side of the Dietrich Bonhoeffers. You know, I was on the side of the people that actually tried to preserve human life and save people and defy the state. And I live with that every day. And I tell you, that's a very different experience. That's an entirely different experience. And so I look at these people who, most of them, it's not that they can't be convinced to change their mind by evidence. It's that they never used evidence to make up their mind.
Yeah. That's a good way to put it.
Their criteria for deciding what they believe was actually which of these options is the path of least resistance. And for as long as that remains the case, their mind will be unchangeable.
Yeah. Guys, we'll get to your super chats in a second, but I thought I'd lighten the mood with something that you would think this is political satire, and I'm sorry to inform you that it's not. But this story came across my feed, and I thought it was worth talking about, because we're talking about, like, you know, what is that turning point? What will be the clincher that makes people go, all right, I'm done. I'm abandoning this now. There were so many things that I thought it could be, but we learned from COVID, it's never the thing that you think it should be. It's always like the weird little thing. This happened. And I bring this up because we've been talking a lot about academia and how it's been co-opted by the left. And I've been reading that book by Gad Saad. And apparently, I didn't know this. This has been going on for a really long time. Like, he's going right back into like the 90s, talking about like when this wokeness was really starting to show its face in, of all things, evolutionary biology and things like that. So Now, what I think will actually get people done and just going enough now, it's not trans women are women. It's not, that you should be giving your kids hormone blockers at 4 years old and they can be a they, them furry. None of that stuff.
No.
It's going to be stuff like this. And now this is from the Greens parody site on X, but this is actually a real story. So I'll just read it to you quickly. This is Dr. Laura Daly. She's from the University of Newcastle. Her latest project was funded by taxpayers at over $500,000, and it's to design Aboriginal smoking ceremonies and welcome to country rituals for astronauts to perform on Mars. Yes, really. And just to show you, like, this is real. This is not like some made up thing.
Rage bait.
This is not rage bait. This is legit. This is where our taxpayer money is going. From our trusty source, the Daily Mail, with all of its ads. So for a $500,000 grant to insert Dreamtime stories into culturally respectful space policy. So this is real. This is a thing. They're the latest recipients of $103 million discovery funding for early career researchers. And essentially, she is learning from songlines, creation stories, and deep cultural connections between people and sky country. And the research will develop intercultural guidelines to help inform space policy, public education, and industry practice. So how does this improve the lives of Indigenous communities? Well, that's what I would ask as well. So this is what I mean. Like, your average punter is now going, can I afford to pay my electricity bill? Can I afford to buy groceries this week? What are they teaching my kid in schools? Am I going to drive over a pothole and bottom out my rim and then have to, replace it? What's that going to cost me? People are thinking about this. And meanwhile, our academics, our so-called esteemed colleagues and the people who think up all these policies, they're thinking about that. They are mocking you. They are laughing at you. They're going, thank you, taxpayer. Give me that money. I need to go and think up new ways on how we can talk about Aboriginal stuff on Mars. Like, we haven't even got there yet. They're demonizing Elon for wanting to get us to Mars, but they're 5 steps ahead of Elon because they're going to make sure, you better believe, that we'll be doing a welcome to country on Mars when Elon gets us there. We don't like Elon, but that doesn't matter.
When it comes to paying respects to elders past, present, and emerging, you can never be too careful. You can never be 100% certain that not one of those elders was ever on Mars. We've found out some remarkable things about Indigenous Australian history. We've found out through works like Dark Emu, etc., that actually they had huge agricultural projects, entire cities, I believe rivaling the city of Rome, I think entire aqueducts, etc. There's no reason not to believe that they also had spaceports and probably microprocessors as well. So I think Carly, that's a really a privileged white position for you to take. The presumptuousness, right. The implied colonialism in your attitude that you've shown towards very serious Indigenous issues. My main consideration was that I didn't observe anything in that research that assured me that they were taking into account the trans perspective on Indigenous smoking ceremonies on Mars. I think further research is needed. And look, I mean, you've got a master's degree. So, Carly, surely you and I, we can team up. We can get a $50 million grant. We can make sure that the perspectives of trans Indigenous Australians are properly considered when designing the smoking ceremonies for Mars.
I can't even come back to your satire. I'm so freaking tired of it. I was trying to think of something clever and I'm like, I got nothing, bro.
This is the thing I've said for years. It's impossible to be Monty Python today.
Yeah.
You actually cannot be Monty Python. One of their most famous sketches that was hilarious for decades was in The Life of Brian, where they have, I want to be a woman. I want you to call me Loretta. You can't be a woman. All right. All of that. Today, that's a serious conversation that ends up with one of them going to prison.
Yeah.
Okay. How do you satirize the world that we live in today?
You do it the opposite way. You go, a man and a woman had sex. No, that sounds outrageous. You know what I mean? I don't know. And look, I'm not retarded. I don't know how to think like that. Sorry.
Yeah.
But what I find like heartwarming is that there are some people who are now like quite comfortable pushing back. I mean, you and I have been doing it for ages,
Sure.
but
Yeah,
we're
yeah.
certainly seeing this in many different ways. I mean, Trump posted a tweet the other day. Did you see the tweet from Trump calling
No.
Tim Walz a retard? He actually called him a retard in a tweet. And he called out Ilhan Omar for marrying her brother. Like, it was outrageous. It was,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
and people, you know, predictively, people were had their feathers fluffed by it. But I'm like, that's how you win, by being utterly outrageous, mocking
Oh,
them. It's
yeah.
not, you know, we've talked about this 100 times, but you know, people want this like statesman-like politician, very smooth, very cool, very statesman-like, you know, very eloquent in their speech. No, what you want is a provocateur. What you want is someone who's utterly outrageous, that like pokes holes in this ridiculous facade that we're all having to suffer under. And I wanted to contrast this story I saw in the Australian, because whilst we're on this woke crap, this was a story that was posted by the Australian, and it's talking about why the Australian creative sector is crumbling. And if there was ever a piece of news for this girl, it's this one. Now, naturally, they are taking a national look at the challenges, and a lot of it has to do with COVID, right? COVID killed it. Now, what do you think all the wokies are saying?
I would assume it's a lack of government funding. They don't care. They need to spend more money. That would be my expectation.
Yeah, you nailed it. You absolutely nailed it. Now, I am making a video on this at the moment, and I am going to argue the reason art is dying is because no one wants to suffer through these ideological sermons anymore. Everyone has had a gutful. I showed you guys this 3 weeks ago when I pulled up the National Gallery of Victoria's website and a couple of other galleries. Before you're even on the freaking website, it's a welcome to country, or it's an acknowledgement of country. I don't know which one's which. And then it's like, there's always something queer, there's always something trans, there's always something progressive. So you can't even go in there and see like a beautiful piece of art without having to trip over all of this woke crap, right? And this is the thing. People vote with their feet. They don't want to go there. That's why it's suffering. You can't get people there. But I will argue this, because this is part of my video, but I think it's relevant. We talk about, the wokies or the lefties will talk about how the arts industry is dying, you know, right-wing extremism, the government needs to fund it more. There is money, and this is proven recently by Oasis, a band from the 90s who have not had an album since the 90s, was able to sell out stadiums 30 years after the release of Wonderwall and had everyone there up on their feet singing these anthems. Don't tell me there's no money. Evidently, there is plenty. People are willing to go and see Oasis, but they're not willing to go see this shit.
Okay, there is so much there. I could not agree more, but I do want to add one more layer to it. But I want to do that in a second, because first I want to get to this comment. Matt Mui says, are we all here not just drinking red wine on a school night, but the first school night of the week? No, you misunderstand the cause and effect. We are here drinking red wine because it's the first school night of the week, okay? It's just understand the cause and effect there. Now, there's a lot of people that are on the exact same wavelength as myself, and I would suspect yourself as well, Carly. The one thing that I think you are aware of, but you just didn't happen to mention in that, was that most of these artists depend on government money, and they won't get the government money unless they tick all the boxes for all the BS. We can complain about them putting the BS in. So my producer, Ben, a wonderful, wonderful filmmaker, he was the producer on Battleground Melbourne. You know him, Carly, has done wonderful work over the years. He and I were trying to team up and to try and figure out, how do you make movies in Australia without going to Screen Australia for money? Because the moment you submit your script to Screen Australia and say, hey, pretty please, can I have some arts grant money? They're going to have a look and say, well, where's the Indigenous part? And we don't like the way this character is portrayed, and you don't have any minority LGBTQI plus BBQ WTF representation in your script. They are going to go through, and unless you tick all of those boxes to their satisfaction, you will never get the Screen Australia money. Then what happens is it bombs because of exactly what you talked about, Carly. Everyone's sick of it. No one wants that shoved down their throat anymore. And then the arts industry says, oh, well, we need the government to spend more money through Screen Australia, because we won't have an arts industry. If it wasn't for Screen Australia, we wouldn't exist. No, guys, if it wasn't for Screen Australia, you wouldn't be looking at how to satisfy a bureaucrat. You'd be looking at how to satisfy a market, and then you would find one sooner or later. And there is no reason why Australia can't make internationally recognized and renowned entertainment. It's one of the most exportable industries on the planet. Movies, TV shows, music, graphic arts, computer games, all of it. There is no reason why Australians cannot be at the absolute forefront. Culturally, so many countries around the world love us. They love our sense of humor. They find us idiosyncratic and interesting. We could have a massive film and television industry, a massive stage production, music industry, exporting to the world. It's one of the easiest industries to export. Why don't we? Because instead of looking at the world as our market, we are looking at the bureaucrat and saying, how do I keep you happy so that you tick the box and I get the grant? And that's what's destroying the arts industry.
Well, this actually is quite perfectly leading into a little video I've just posted before, and I am fully expecting, like I said, to end up in a body bag. So just letting you know, this might be the last time you saw me, but I think I make a good point in this, and if you will indulge me, may I play it?
Of course.
All right. So this is friend of the show, but this is not what you guys will expect. So let me just go back to my profile and let me.
Friend of the show is a dangerous phrase around here.
Yes, well, it's everyone's favorite. So it's bigger, hairier, and much harder to ignore. So apologies. Problem. And no, it's not a lack of talent. It's bigger, hairier, and much harder to ignore. So let's talk about it. I know what you're all thinking. Carly, Abby Chatfield's boyfriend? Ooh. Well, what can I say? I live dangerously. We're going to address this bloke, Adam Hyde, otherwise known as Kelly Holiday, or one half of Peking Duck. And I know you're all thinking we're about to shit on him for his performance over the weekend, but to your surprise, I'm actually here in his defense. And no, it's not because I agree with him. I certainly don't. Politically, Adam and I are on very opposite sides of reality. But as a libertarian, I respect free speech. And even though that's a courtesy him and his girlfriend would certainly not afford someone like me, given that they want us to just die, that's a direct quote, I am a girl of principles. I'm never going to shit on someone who's clearly passionate about his art, and I actually think we need more of it. So tall poppy be damned. What I'm interested in is brand saturation, and this is the worst PR strategy, and it's currently the one strangling Adam's career. They've mistaken visibility for virtue, and the plan seems to be shove Adam into every podcast, panel, and Instagram story in Australia, hoping that sheer saturation turns him into a cultural event. They've dressed him up like a Michael Hutchinson's reboot, the 70s porn moustache, the Ron Jeremy swagger, but there's one tiny problem. You can't resurrect a cultural moment just because you wish it still mattered. The music Adam's making belongs to a world that no longer exists. It was millennials that lived the all-nighters, the glitter, the ecstasy in your bra, the revolver walk of shame at sunrise. We earned those lyrics, and this generation hasn't. Sadly, clubbing is dead, and this generation just vapes, spirals, and self-diagnoses anxiety disorders on TikTok. They're not sweating it out to a Tiesto set or transcending to a Four Strings remix. Kelly Holiday is selling nostalgia to a generation with no memory of the thing that they're nostalgic for. Adam has been propelled into ubiquity largely through his association with Abby Chatfield and an unusually progressive publicity apparatus. His cultural footprint is not earned through artistic inevitability, but engineered through relentless multi-platform exposure. Each appearance is freighted with the same cluster of approved attitudes, and the result is not influence, but it's fatigue. Overexposure, when coupled with moral grandstanding, does not amplify his message. It's actually inoculating against it. Authentic cultural authority has never been granted by publicists, nor secured through an accumulation of talking head appearances. It is conferred, often reluctantly, when an artist manages to ignite something primal and unnegotiable in the audience. Everything else, the branding, the advocacy, the outfits, the carefully curated outrage, it's all superficial. If you strip that away, what remains is either resonance or indifference. The more incessantly he and his handlers insert him into the conversation, the more convincingly they demonstrate that the conversation was never truly about his music to begin with. Progressive ideology does not refine art. It sadly neuters it. And the moment the rock star becomes the regime's well-groomed mascot, the erotic charge of that rebellion collapses into a tepid safety of corporate compliance. They've long forgotten that the audience will only resonate if they truly feel it, not when they're told to think it.
Yeah.
It's been pushed on us, shoved down our throat. And I think Adam, is a really good example of this. This is the music industry or the Australian creative industry at their best. I will take this square peg and I will shove it in your round hole. And that is a metaphor I use deliberately. and that's what it feels like. It feels like we are being sodomized by shit we are so uninterested in. We don't want this crap and they don't care. They are force feeding it to us. And so what you're seeing is people are honestly tuning out. This is why clubs are dying. This is why no one's going out, not because they don't want to. I mean, you could argue cost of living, but mostly there's no nightlife anymore. Everything is done under this guise of like, don't offend anyone. Don't wear something like, could be offensive. Don't say the offensive thing. It's a really difficult way to live your life.
So, Carly, I owe the world an apology because I've realized that I was wrong and that words are violence. You proved that with your sentence. But actually, I was going to give the gong for the most violent comment of the night to Decarb 420. Imagine the smell in their house. That is a physical assault using nothing more than words. That if words are violence was a sentence, that's it right there.
Yeah, no, it's awful. I as someone who's in the creative industry, I mean, you and I had this conversation a little while ago, and it's something that I've been having to reconcile with. The bigger this podcast gets, the more we do the Oddcast, the less likely it is that I'll ever have a creative career in this country, given the current climate. And, and for anyone who can sympathize, like it's a really hard thing to reconcile something that you love, something that you're super passionate about, and you spent your entire life dreaming of doing is now sort of slipping away, not because you're not talented, not because I can't compete, but because the gatekeepers and the powers that be will never allow someone like me in there. Never. Given the political climate, should it change, that might change. And so, you and I have had this conversation, and I think it's something that is worth talking about. They're never going to open for us, so you have to build your own infrastructure. You have to do it this way, right? Like, and find different ways to get your stuff out there. And thankfully, thanks to social media, YouTube, TikTok, it's democratized it, and that's why there's so much competition now. And you don't necessarily need to have the record contract. You don't necessarily need to have the IMG modeling contract. You can get there just from cultivating your own audience. And that's why these kind of creative endeavors are so important, whether it's you and I on a podcast or someone doing a YouTube channel. That's why, when people support us, like that's the reason this stuff exists. Without it, we can't do it.
You can't do it. You can't do it without it. Now, speaking of which, we do need to jump across to some super chats because we've had a few. Yes. So heading down to everyone
thinks I'm dirty.
Baz the Dark Horse is having some issue with membership.
With Kofi?
Well, I'm not sure because I think he's looking for a YouTube option to join again. So Kofi is not YouTube, Baz. So YouTube is how you subscribe, and through YouTube you could do things like super chats, which is what you've done here. But if your Kofi membership,
there are a couple of glitches. Sorry, I was going to say there are a couple of glitches with Kofi. So two things: when you sign up, you will get an email that asks you to verify your email. If you don't verify it, Kofi will kick you off. Like that's it. That's their policy. We don't control that. Secondly, and unfortunately, if your account doesn't have enough money and it doesn't come through and they try to take it a few times, it will cancel the membership. So we're not doing it, guys. Trust me. We want you there. We're not going to be like, no, we don't want your money. Of course we do. So if you're having troubles with Kofi, that could be why. You can sign back on. There has definitely been issues with people not verifying their emails. If you're having any issues, please just let us know on Kofi. I can't read the chats here. So if you have chat problems with that, do it on Kofi and we'll get back to you. But yeah, unfortunately, that's just how it works. If we find that Kofi isn't right, we will move to a different platform. But so far, we've only had a couple of people with issues. So we're trying to make it work.
All right. Fake Names says, listen to Good People Break Bad Laws. Great book, mate. I welled up when your voice broke talking about the emails you received. The book gave me a lot to think about. Thanks. I appreciate it. Yes. I did that as an audiobook, and it was more difficult to record than I was expecting. I will be honest about that. That's yes. So anyway, thank you. I appreciate the feedback, and thank you for listening to it. I'm actually not even sure where you can buy it. I went to put it onto Spotify. Was it Spotify Audible? I went to put it onto Audible, and it's so ridiculous. They take such a large percentage. If you're not an American, they take such a large percentage, and your sale price is so restricted that it ends up being literally like $2 that you get from having written the book, recorded the book, paid for the audio mastering to be done, and then you're getting $2 for each download. So I don't actually sell it through Audible. It's available elsewhere, but I couldn't even tell you where. You'd have to Google for it. I wouldn't even know where to find it. Yes. Okay. So we've got a couple of comments to do with a video that Jared Rennick has done. So this is exactly the point that I was making when I was criticizing this. Yeah, video of Jared Rennick coming out against Pauline's recent actions. I'm not sure about that specifically, but there is another one relating to Jared Rennick's ideas. So this I am familiar with. So sorry to Pro Engineer. I actually don't know about the video where he's come out against Pauline's recent actions. Is that him coming out against her going to the Senate wearing a burqa, or coming out against her speaking at the Australia rally? Carly, if you could just keep an eye in the regular chats for a reply from Pro Engineer. So Pro Engineer, no need to do another super chat, but if you could just give us more context for that, that would be appreciated. In the meantime, RU Isaac says, hey guys, keen for your view on Rennick's ideas, specifically bonds to fund income-earning government-owned assets. Aside from government changing hands, inflation, and management risk, what other factors? So aside from these factors, these risks, government changing hands, inflation, and mismanagement risk, what other factors to consider? Okay, so there's a lot there. So I've interviewed Jared Rennick in the past. I consider him to be a very, very intelligent man, very, very powerful intellect. It's not often that I come away from an interview feeling like not only, oh, that person knew more than I did about this particular topic, but actually feeling like, wow, that guy had more horsepower than me, right? I was running a Turbo 4. He was running a Turbo V8, right? He's in a different class. And I came away with that feeling from him, not because he was putting me down or making me feel that. He wasn't belittling me at all, but he just has so much horsepower intellectually and so much recall of information and dates and names and everything else. And we branched across all kinds of different topics, and he was right there with me all the way through. Just remarkable. However, I think he's wrong on some things, and this is one of the areas where I do actually think that he's wrong. Now, is his idea better than what we're doing right now? Yes. Is his idea the best idea? No. So if we had an alternative, keep doing what we're doing or do what he suggests, I would say do what he suggests. It's better. But if we're reforming what we're doing now, why not go for something that's actually good rather than a halfway measure? So let's go through the comment here, because the comment here actually kind of gives us the answers here. So the risks here so the idea is the government issues bonds to fund income-earning government-owned assets. So bonds can work in one of two ways. Bonds can be issued for purchase in the retail market. So if you've got savings in the bank account, so war bonds, for example, were a way for the government to fund the war effort. And if you had money sitting in the bank, you would buy war bonds and you would give them your money instead, and you would hold the bond. And the bond was basically a promise from the government that they would give you back your money plus a small amount of interest in due course over time. And it was one of the ways that they tried to raise money for the war effort. Another way that a government can issue bonds is actually for them to use those bonds to pay people for their work. So you pay the contractors that are building the piece of infrastructure in bonds, or essentially just issuing cash. That's essentially what it amounts to. The government simply issues cash to cover the costs of the piece of infrastructure. Now, in theory, this can actually work a lot better than what we do at the moment. Because at the moment, the way we add new cash into the economy is through people borrowing on their houses. So when you get a loan from a bank on money for a house, that's not money that the bank had on deposit. That is money that they invented out of thin air. You come to them, you say, I own a house, I'm buying this house, it's going to be worth this much money, I need money to be able to borrow it, to be able to buy it. You know, it's $1 million house, let's say, which is just a median house in Melbourne, apparently these days. It's $1 million house, you need $900,000. They're not taking $900,000 that they had on deposit from depositors and loaning that to you. That's not how this works. How this works is that they have, under their central banking license, under their relationship with the Central Bank of Australia, the Reserve Bank of Australia, they have the license to literally create money out of thin air. So they set up a bank account and they deposit $900,000. That $900,000 didn't come from anywhere. They literally just went beep, boop, boop, and there's $900,000 that didn't exist a second ago. Now, under a fiat currency system, that's not the end of the world. But the caveat, the catch is this. If the money supply grows faster than the value of the country that the money represents, in the case of Australian money, Australia, if the money supply grows faster than the country grows, then the dollars become worth less each. because in very simplistic terms, you can think of money as essentially the value of the country. And if you've got $1 million, but the country's worth $1 million, then each dollar is worth $1. But if you just double the money supply, now there's $2 million, but you haven't added to the value of the country. Well, now the dollars are actually going to halve their value. It's not that the country becomes worth twice as much because you printed the money. No. The value of the country is the same. The value of the money will decline. So when we issue money, we have to make sure that there is an asset underneath it. Now, this is under accepted monetary theory using fiat currency. I reject fiat currency outright, but this is the system that we have. So in theory, a government issuing bonds or issuing just outright money to pay for infrastructure is an improvement on what we have right now, because they are using that money to build a piece of infrastructure that's worth something. So it increases the value of the country. So therefore, it doesn't cause inflation to the same degree. It doesn't devalue the currency because the country got wealthier. We became worth more because they did something useful with that money. Now, compare that to what we're doing at the moment, where we're going into debt to pay welfare payments that are being spent on cigarettes and cheap electronics. All right, we have nothing to show for that money, but the money's been created anyway. So this is why inflation is such a problem right now for us. So Rennick's idea is way better than what we're doing right now. That's true. But I would actually cut to the heart of the problem, and it's contained in this question. Aside from governments changing hands, inflation, and mismanagement risk, what are the other factors to consider? Mismanagement risk is not a factor that we can dismiss lightly, because government owned is the problem here. If the government owns it, it no longer has a profit motive. You can run all the numbers you want and say, oh, yes, this is profitable. If it isn't actually just engaged in outright commerce in every direction, it will end up running inefficiently. And I know I'm rabbit holing here, but this is super important. Without price signals, you cannot make decisions. The minute the government gets involved in something and says, we'll decide how much that's worth, we'll decide how much to pay for this product, this service, for a power station, we will decide what the price of a kilowatt hour of electricity should be, whatever decisions it makes, it removes prices. And the problem is money in the form of transactions, which depend on prices, is our primary form of telling each other the truth. We lie with our words all the time. We tell the truth with our money. Money, changing hands, prices, volume of trade, how much business is being done, that is all information. That is all part of the conversation. And so unfortunately, the minute something is government owned and government run, it cannot be properly managed, because the entire reason you got the government involved is because it's not going to run on commercial terms. If it's just going to run on commercial terms and be profitable, why is the government getting involved in the first place? You don't need them. The private sector will provide. The only reason you need government ownership is if it's not going to run on commercial terms. And if it's not going to run on commercial terms, you don't have the information you need to make good decisions and to be a good manager. So unfortunately, the whole premise kind of falls apart. Now, Senator Rennick is a good guy, but he's a big believer in government-owned assets, government-owned utilities, this idea that the government should provide all of these different things because they're going to do a better job than the greedy private sector. And he's right in the sense that the greedy private sector today is corporatist. They've buddied up with the government. They work with the regulators to screw over the consumers. So he's not wrong that problem exists. But everywhere in the world where utilities have been placed in the hands of the government, they have ended up basically bankrupting the country. And this happens today with countries that put them back into state hands. We're going to watch that happen with the SEC. We've seen that happen already with the NBN, by the way. Our telecommunications was privatized. Telstra was sold off. The market was somewhat deregulated. They allowed competition to come in. We had multiple different companies competing to offer us goods and services. And then they said, right, broadband, we're going to turn that back into a utility, a government-run utility. We're going to start the National Broadband Network, a government-run internet company. Well, how much has that spent? 4 times, 5 times what it was originally supposed to spend?
And it's
loses money hand over fist, and it only breaks even on paper because they've written off all of the capital cost, right? It cannot run on commercial terms. This is what happens when the government gets involved. So it's kind of a flawed question, if you get where I'm coming from, R.U. Isaac. It's sort of, if we ignore the fact that it's going to go horribly wrong, could it work? Well, no, because it's going to go horribly wrong. It just is. So what's the better solution? The better solution is the nuclear option. Governments should not be issuing money. We are so used to money being issued by governments that we think it cannot be any other way. It's like if children went to school when they were 2 weeks old and they learned how to walk because they had walking lessons from a specialist walking instructor. Within 2 generations, we would forget that parents could teach their kids how to walk, right? We would think, no, a school has to do that. You need a specialist teacher to teach a kid how to walk. You think it has to be that way. We've only ever known a world where governments issue currency. This is one of the worst ways to do it. This is one of the worst ways to do it. We need to have competition in currency where you're not required to use a specific currency. You're not, it's mandated you have to use Australian dollars in Australia. Well, that shouldn't be the case. And in fact, actually, it kind of isn't the case anymore. You can use Bitcoin. You can use other, digital money, digital currencies are beginning to break up that monopoly. But for as long as we have a monopoly government issued currency, our entire economy is broken at its most fundamental level because the thing that we are using as our means of exchange is a broken, centrally controlled thing. So the actual way to do it is the way that they did it in Canada when they first were rolling out the railways. A railway tycoon simply comes along to the Canadian government and says, hey, Canadian government, if you will give me this strip of land 300 miles long and 2 miles wide, I promise I will build a railway straight down the middle, connecting the east and west coast or connecting whatever it is, and it won't cost you a cent. And the government goes, well, that sounds like a pretty good deal. We get a railway. We don't have to pay for it. Okay, you can have this empty, remote piece of land. And what they did then was that they started a marketing campaign. And they said, hey, everybody, we're building a railway straight down the middle of this massive, long stretch of land. We are building, I think it was actually thousands of miles. I don't think it was hundreds. I think it was actually thousands of miles of railway straight down here. And if you buy one of the plots of land on either side of that railway that runs for 1 mile in either direction on either side of that railway, if you set up the signal, our train will stop for you right there in your backyard at the back of your farm. And we will transport whatever goods, whatever services, whatever people, whatever it is that you need taken to and from the town. You have a train that will show up and will stop for those goods and will take them to market and will bring you back home again. And in return, you had to buy the land. And so they sold a bunch of these plots of land, and that's the money they used to build the railway, right? So literally what they did was they captured the increased value. The fact that there was going to be a railway running along the back of that property massively increased its value. And they captured that increase in value by selling that land to people that were going to use it for commercial purposes, i.e. farms, and then they used that capital to build the railway. That's the way it should be done, in my opinion, and it should be done without reference to government. It should be, apart from just the government agreeing that they won't interfere. Yes, you can do that. We'll stay out of the way. That's as far as you want the government to be involved. And it should be currency agnostic. It shouldn't involve the issuing of bonds. Essentially, what happens in these situations is effectively you've actually got a corporately issued bond. I won't go into the technicality of how that works, but de facto, what you've got in a financial sense is that the project itself is the bond. And it funds itself through its own increased value that it's creating and generating into the economy. If you fund your infrastructure that way, then actually every new piece of infrastructure improves the value of your dollar. It doesn't destroy it. Long answer, I'm sorry, but that's, yeah.
I'm not going to lie. A lot of that went over my head, but sure.
Okay, sorry about that. There's 930 people watching. Only 700 of them are asleep. So,
I understand what you're saying, but when we talk about things like that, I just sort of go, man, I just want to be able to walk down the street and not get stabbed. That's where I'm at. We can worry about that stuff later, but I've got the basics. I want to be able to turn my electricity on without having a 4-digit bill. But speaking of bills, this story popped up today. I've only listened to a little bit of it, so maybe more has developed since that, but we have to talk about this. This is outrageous. So this is an exclusive from 2GB talking about how, a listener, a random person found this out. He was shopping around for car insurance and thought, what would happen if I just tick the non-binary? And it turns out you get a significant saving on your car insurance. And I think it's like $400, $500, $600. So he's found, and then he went to another one. So one was Allianz, the other one was NRMA, and he tried it and there was a significant saving. Now, of course, don't worry, guys. I've read the comments and some goody two-shoes has commented, that's because most non-binary things are primarily women. I don't know if that works. I don't know if you're allowed to say that statement. You can't say non-binary people are women. But
Yeah.
regardless, that was this person's claim. And because they're women, they're less risk to the insurance company, therefore they get cheaper prices. I'm not sure how that works. So you can play the woman card when you're non-binary and you get a discount. It's very confusing. But this, now I know you're going to make a joke, and you can make a joke in a second. This deserves total condemnation. The fact that now you just have to tick different boxes and you get savings, and this, we know this for Aboriginal or Indigenous. If you tick that, you'll see significant shifts in the way you're treated in a hospital. So now, guys, everyone watching, all 948 of you that are watching right now, you are all now non-binary Indigenous people. You're welcome. Save yourself some money. I'm sorry, this is bullshit. Absolute bullshit.
Could not agree more. And it's so much worse than most people realize, and it's been going on for so much longer. As soon as I saw this come out, and I should probably do a video bringing these things together, because I guess most people don't live and breathe this stuff like the sad sack that I am. But I'm going to bring up a different story from 2 years ago. Victoria police officers had to be interviewed because an entire police department was claiming to be non-binary, because by being non-binary, they got the female clothing laundry allowance every year. And so they had figured out this little loophole to get themselves a little tiny extra allowance in their salary. That is coming from Victoria police officers. That's the moral fiber out of which they are apparently made. Very happy to play these games and fiddle with the paperwork for their own financial benefit. So if you were to take Carly's advice, and I'm not saying you should, but if you were to take Carly's advice and claim to be non-binary, when perhaps someone who is willing to risk going to prison for upsetting a non-binary person might be willing to point to you and say, hang on, I don't see you behaving like you're non-binary. If you get challenged over your claim to be non-binary, you can actually point to them to Victoria Police themselves, who clearly have no problem with this sort of paperwork diddling and fiddling. I actually need to look up that story and see what happened next, because literally this around about this article was the last time I looked at it.
Yeah, so someone just made a good point. Census is next year. So guys, we're all non-binary, we're all Aboriginal, because you don't have to prove it. So why should we miss out on all the savings? And this is okay. So as I said, I'm going on a big podcast next week, and I've been preparing some talking points, because I don't think they'll go for a got ya, but just in case. And I dare say, given that we're going to be talking a lot about woke, I need to focus on socialism, because the two are tied intrinsically together. But the funny thing about socialism, and the way I explain it to people who don't understand politics, is that there's two types, right? From observational point of view. You have your champagne socialist, who has been able to use the capitalist system to afford themselves great wealth. And then because of amassed great wealth, and they're very secure and they're financially secure, they are really good at then doing philanthropy and talking to the plebs, the yous and me's, and telling us that even though I personally benefit off the capitalist system, I know that it's stacked against you. So I am going to not let you have access to the capital system, because we believe socialism would be better for you, right? And if that saving me. So that's your first socialist. And then your second one is your one that has no skin in the game. So socialists are really good at telling other people how to spend their money and making claims on someone else's money, because they themselves have never had to accrue it or amass wealth. And so when you see shit like this, the only people that will get behind, Aboriginal people or non-binary people getting discounts are people who have never had to actually work hard and pay for all this shit that the taxpayers are paying for. So the only people that would champion that are your champagne socialists, who, like I said, have benefited off a capitalist system and now get to turn around and tell us mere mortals how to live, or the ones who have no money and want to dictate how you and I spend it. That's it. Yeah. So these are the people who are pointing the fingers at you and I and saying you should be having to pay because your skin color is not a good skin color and we've deemed you bad. So therefore pay more.
Socialism, literally, I mean, there's the famous Margaret Thatcher quote, the problem with socialism is eventually you run out of other people's money. Let's drill into that for just a moment. In order to have something to redistribute, someone has to have made something in the first place. Socialism can only work when it comes in as a parasite on the back of genuine free market capitalism, not the corporatist nonsense that we've got. I mean, actual free market capitalism that creates things, makes the pie bigger. Then socialists can come in and play the envy game. But very quickly, if we do what they say, there's nothing left to redistribute, and there's no one to be envious of. So the problem gets solved. But it's literally socialism and the politics of envy is only possible on the back of prosperity brought about by not socialism.
Well, it's funny, you know, my favorite quote around socialism is that you convert yourself into socialism, but you have to shoot shoot your way out. And that seems to be the thing that goes over most people's heads. Like, you know, seeing this Zohan Mandani, sorry, and already seeing who he's hiring in his cabinet is fascinating. Yeah. And it's all the DEI, it's all the progressive stuff. And as I said, I'm a full-blown accelerationist. Hire them. We've already seen that through the Biden regime. We already saw it, like the guy, I have to pull him up, was the guy with the bald head that stole the suitcase of clothes.
Let's come back to him in a second. He was the Department of Transport guy, was he? You mentioned you can vote your way into socialism, but you have to shoot your way out. For those of you that are thirsty, that is exactly what I saw when I was in Venezuela. Was that, yes, they voted their way in and then they were trapped. And Venezuela is an important topic for tonight as well. We'll get back to that. But I just wanted to give everyone the chance to have a little drink because I mentioned Venezuela.
Yeah, well, I brought up the Venezuela thing. I was like, I think this is actually more important than people realize. But, you know,
the transport guy, I know who you mean, the bald-headed transport.
I've got it here.
Yes, that's right. High heels and dresses. And he would steal people's stuff and then wear it publicly.
Yeah. And so, like, you know, we've seen this play out. We know exactly what happens. We have the evidence now, as they say. And like I said, objective reality, these people are allergic to it. So this guy who literally stole people's luggage, and of all the people whose luggage to steal, it was a black woman's luggage. So he's like a white male strutting around in stolen clothes from an African woman. Like, you could not write this script. You couldn't.
Yeah.
So, you know, this is going to all go the way we expect it. But back to the whole DEI and woke and sort of this entire conversation that we've been having. The people in government who are making these decisions, who are legislating all these policies, the reason they get away with it is because most of us turn a blind eye. Like, I've seen comments already tonight going, oh, I don't want to talk about this shit. Oh, like, who cares? This is why they win, because you don't care. You need to care.
Hard.
And I know it's hard.
But it's a balancing act because we have limited bandwidth.
But, you know, that's why I bring up your Abbeys and stuff like that, because I'm telling you now, you might not like them, but, mate, they have a chokehold on the young generation. That should put the fear of God in you.
All right, before we do Venezuela and all the drug cartels and all of that, let's just get through a few more of these super chats because we didn't get many done. I promise I won't talk for so long this time. Big fella says, Australia is in need of someone real, no bullshit, just say it as it is. 100%. Honestly, we just want to know that what comes out of their mouth is what they actually believe. Is that so hard? Honestly, is that really so hard? Lady Patience says, you should invite Dr. Joanna Howe on the Oddcast. I've done a few interviews with her. She does amazing work and very important work. Pretty heavy for a podcast, if I'm honest. So for those that don't know, Dr. Joanna Howe campaigns for the lives of babies who are born alive after a failed abortion, because in Australia, they get left to die. We literally put them on a shelf. I won't go into any more detail than that. But she does really important work, but probably not going to be a topic for an hour and a half, 2 hour long Oddcast. But I have done some interviews with her. Big fella again says, hey, the Aboriginals have witnessed boomerang-shaped UFOs. Think about it. They had to have gotten here somehow 250,000 years, 7 months and 3 days ago. I think you missed the 6 hours and 4 minutes and 26 seconds, but 28 seconds now. But just make sure you're more accurate next time, please, big fella. We appreciate that. Loki. Wow, we haven't had one of these in a little while. That is a three-figure super chat.
Oh, thanks, Loki.
In space, no one can hear you. Welcome to country. He says, not one of my best. Hey, listen, for $100, I'll laugh anyway, right? I mean,
100%.
It's not bad. So,
if you do the Welcome to Country in Mars and no one hears it, did you do a Welcome to Country? Is that, is it kind of like a tree falling in the woods?
Well, technically, Mars has an atmosphere. It's about 1/100th of the 1/100th of the density of Earth's atmosphere, something like that. So I can't know what would the smoke do. The smoke would probably be too dense for the atmosphere and would probably just like go down instead of up.
Well, there's no oxygen, so how do you start a fire anyway?
Well, that's a good point. It's mostly what is it? It's mostly CO2. I mean, how come Mars is colder than Earth?
Because it's further away from the sun.
But it's the atmosphere is almost pure CO2, is it not? Am I remembering that right?
Oh, climate change. That's what killed Mars.
That's right. That's right. What is Mars atmosphere? That auto completes scarily early in my Google. Carbon dioxide. Yeah, it's CO2. It's carbon 95% carbon dioxide. So how come they don't have terrible global warming? That's my question.
Well, they are just
not bad.
dirt. So Mars doesn't have water. So well, it has ice.
Well, yeah, which is water, just because the density of the atmosphere won't allow it to unfreeze.
So hang on. So Mars does have water because ice is water. I know that, and there's definitely ice caps on Mars. So Mars has water. Wasn't that something they were trying to prove, that Mars has water?
No, I actually, now that I think about it, I think you'll find that it is frozen gases, as in it's not H2O that's been frozen that is the ice. It's other things that are frozen that is the ice, I think. Baz, thanks for the tech support. I hope you do work it out, Baz. Good luck. Now, you can read this one, Carly.
Do either of you know what the massive sign at Parliament every Wednesday is about? I go into each city each Wednesday for work and I'm horrified it's allowed. Something to do with Iran, not written in English, only Islamic Arabic. I don't know what you're referring to. I apologize. I don't go into the city unless I absolutely have to. Speaking of which, I do have to on Wednesday because the Castle Law petition is being discussed at Parliament.
Yes.
I will be there Wednesday night or Wednesday evening.
Wednesday evening. Okay, good. I was just trying to make sure it wasn't going to interfere with our podcast. Because, I know that people being stabbed and stuff is all very well and good, but we have a podcast, Carly. I hope you weren't planning on interrupting our filming.
I will not. I will be leaving that and then heading into the city to go. And I know the most annoying thing is it's the upper house, so I won't see Jacinta. But man, would I just like let my eyes bore into her? Say it.
Enjoy it.
Anyway,
enjoy it.
So, do you want to talk? Oh, are we still going super chats? We got more.
Couple more. So, RU Isaac says, "Awesome Tova, as usual, saying what I'm thinking." That was in response to my long diatribe earlier. Nobody builds boats out of trash to escape capitalism. Yes, when they build walls around socialist countries, it is not to keep the capitalists out. And the comment of the night, Sloth says, "I like candlelit dinners, holding hands, and long walks on the beach." Oops, sorry, wrong box. Well, good luck with that, Sloth. I hope that your Grindr profile treats you well.
I'm going to get dark for 2 seconds because last week we talked about the burqa, right? I saw this story. Now, this is a developing story, so just take this with a grain of salt, but this is a terrible story that's come out of the Netherlands. Are you familiar with this story? This is a young woman. She's a teenager. She was a Syrian girl, and she was murdered by her own family.
Yes.
Yeah. So for anyone who doesn't know, I'll just read this for you. She was a 18-year-old Syrian girl in the Netherlands and was allegedly bound with tape and drowned in a ditch, with authorities accusing her father and brothers of involvement in the killing. Dutch investigators say the motive appears linked to a family conflict over her lifestyle and decision to stop wearing the hijab. When taken into custody, the suspects reportedly told the police that such acts were part of their culture, according to local media. So this is, known as an honor killing. When a Muslim woman defects or is in the eyes of the men in her family dishonorable, they will murder them out of honor. And the reason I bring this story up, this is incredibly dark, it's hideous and awful, is right now we currently have an argument going on in Parliament around the burqa. The burqa, for anyone who's not familiar, is the full face covering, right? You can't see anything.
It's the letterbox. The letterbox.
Right? And this is an oppressive garment. And you've got people on the progressive left who are arguing that the burqa is actually a sign of a resistance to the patriarchy.
Yeah,
I
so
kid you
ridiculous.
not. I kid you not. That is their statement, that the burqa is a form of resistance from the patriarchy. Well, ladies and gentlemen, let me represent what happens when you fail to wear your hijab or your
Mhm.
burqa under patriarchy. You end
Yeah,
up murdered. Right. So the reason this is important is that, whenever these sentiments are going around, you need to be armed with the facts and know that a lot of these horrible things that are going on, they'll never, ever be discussed by the left because it completely throws off their narrative. And so this is something that, I will drum this beat as long as I can. I brought up that movie about the stoning of Soraya M. Whenever I see this debate around Islam, fundamental Islam, happening, we need to remember what the evidence shows us, and that these honor killings and the way women are treated in Syria, in Yemen, in Afghanistan is abysmal. Right. And these people will gaslight us in the Western countries and say that Islam's a great thing and diversity is
yeah.
our strength. I'm sorry. I have no time for it.
So I'm not going to read this comment, but people can read and have a giggle for themselves. So there's a couple of things here. Firstly, in these sorts of situations, we need to immediately see the arrest of everyone who is a suspect, and they need to not be granted bail on the basis that they are a flight risk until after we've actually figured out for sure who's who and who was involved and who was not. This is one of those situations where the reality is that this is so normal and so culturally accepted within certain cultures that we actually, like, if you were to take the normal approach of we're going to arrest and interview people, and over the next week we're going to build a picture of what happened, and then we're going to move and arrest people, by then they're gone. These people only arrived in your country a few years ago. They didn't actually flee because they had to flee. They left as economic migrants. Now that they're at risk of going to prison for 30 years, they're going to go back. They are. They're going to leave.
Yeah.
So you need to round up everybody who is a genuine suspect and remand them in custody without the possibility of bail on the basis that they are a flight risk until such time as you figured out, this person we're not going to charge because we don't think they're involved. We got the wrong guy. But anyone that you do think is involved, needs to stay in custody until their trial. Again, because otherwise they are too much of a flight risk. And if found guilty, again, this is one of those, I'm like, I'm sorry, but there are situations that I think do warrant the death penalty. And if you have intentionally murdered a comparatively defenseless child, the live chat on my TV blocks Carl's face. It'll be better if it blocks Topher's face. Andrew, just for you. I honestly, mate. Honestly, that's well played, sir. Well played. This is not, so I'm very much against the death penalty when there is any level of doubt, not just beyond reasonable doubt. Like if there is any level, if there is a shred of doubt, we can't apply the death penalty. But in these sorts of cases, there tends to be no doubt whatsoever. These people are proud of what they do. They think that it's normal. They will defend it. They will argue for it. They will tell you that they had to do it. And at that point, we say, well, there's something we have to do to you now. That's, end of story. Women should not have to live in fear of this happening. And every time this happens and the perpetrators get away with it, every other woman lives in fear that could be them next.
People seem to forget the acid attacks as well. Like that was a big headlining story a few years ago about Muslim women who were attacked with acid and burned their faces off. So these are all the real realities, and this is why I'm trying to understand how progressive left and Islam somehow go together. It doesn't make sense, but in their mind it does. Yep. And just this weekend, Melbourne had bloody protests again, and this time it's for mass migration because we've moved on from Palestine. That's no longer the current thing. Now it's about mass migration. And in the last week, I've collected a bunch of stories, and I'm also quite weary of the fact that if I show too many of these stories, I will get painted as a racist. But did you see the story that came out of Adelaide last week? And it was a man that was caught defecating on a nature strip, an Indian man.
Yes, indeed.
You want to talk about this? I think it's important.
Well, I don't have much to say beyond what we sort of said. The same thing as when we saw a couple of Indians throwing a bunch of trash into a creek. It's like you have to deal with those individuals. You have to make an example out of those individuals.
Yeah, I talk about shame a lot, and I believe the approach from the man who filmed him was correct. And people are like, oh, you showed his face. 100%. Yes, we did show his face. Yes, we showed his bare ass as well, because this is like, this person had no consideration. They knew perfectly well what they were doing. They were in a very public area with pants down, about to shit on a nature strip, and they were totally fine with it. And this like, that might be what they do in Bangladesh. It might be what they do in Pakistan. It might be what they do in India. You know, I'm not Indian or Pakistani or Bangladeshi. I'm not going to tell you what to do in your country. But here in Australia, you better believe I'll tell you what you fucking do. 100%. Filming him was the correct response. And if I am mistaken, he actually got fined for harassment via carrier service.
I don't believe that's the case. So there's people in the comments saying they got arrested and so forth. I saw that. My spider senses tingled because the platforms that we're promoting it are the ones that I know from past experience. They will go for rage bait. They don't actually care whether something's true. They just care whether they get clicks. I then did some digging to try and find a primary source. None of the posts that I found led to a primary source. They all made claims about what was said by, Mark Butler, the immigration minister, something like that. They had quotes from him. They made claims about what happened. None of them had any links to source documents or enough information to be able to search and find source documents. I then went and looked and Googled and did my thing to try and find source documents. I was not able to find a single source document to verify that there was any sort of consequence at any sort of official level for that individual who did the filming. Now, that may have changed. Things may have surfaced online. I may have missed something. But to my knowledge, that didn't happen. Now, have you found something different? Because that was a week ago that I looked.
So no, this is just the Daily Mail article. Sorry, guys, I didn't mean it to be loud. So this is the footage.
Brother, what are you doing, cuz? Cuz, what are you doing? What are you doing? What do you mean? What are you doing, cuz? What are you fucking doing? This is Australia. I know. Don't on the ground, you fucking pig. Go! Get out of here! Right. What do you mean, right? Huh? You fucking sicko? Fucking peeing on the ground. What is wrong with you? Huh? You're squatting. That's not how you pee, you fucking weirdo.
The article just basically talks about the man unleashing a tirade on him and confronting him and whatnot. But, you know, we talk about multiculturalism. We talk about, you know, diversity is our strength and things like this. I believe everyone has a right to be outraged by this because, like, as we say, you're welcome to come here, but assimilate. The second you don't, out you go. I don't want Australia to become a place where we get stabbed every day like South Africa, we have public defecation like India or Pakistan or Bangladesh, or, you know, we have to worry about women who are going to be murdered because they're not wearing a hijab. Like, these are imported cultural issues and they happen overseas, and I feel very bad for the people that suffer under them. But here in Australia, we do have a say and we have a right to be able to speak up about it. I don't want to import this shit. I really don't. And I have no problem with migration. I have no issue with other cultures, but assimilate or out you go.
And see, I agree with that. And Baz has jumped in here and says that's why you're wrong on immigration. I think you misunderstand where I'm at on immigration. If someone's doing that and they're defending it, fine, no problem, kick them out. You know, or at the very least, make sure they face the consequences of their actions, the same as you or I would if we were exposing all of our genitalia in public. Baz, you or I, you know, we would get fined. We would get probably, you know, remanded in custody for a night to teach us a lesson, that sort of thing. So they need to suffer the exact same consequences as anybody else. And if they're an immigrant and they're not a citizen, potentially deportation. I don't have a problem with that. What concerns me is when people say, we got a video of an Indian shitting on the ground, so therefore we have to stop Indian immigration. It's like, well, now hang on. Now you're treating people as a group rather than as individuals. And I believe, and I am a defender of individual human rights. Every single individual needs to be judged and treated on their individual merits. We don't punish one person for the actions of another. And just because they share, you know, that they were born on that piece of dirt over there, you know, remember, India is a huge place. There's a lot of people there. So this Indian was born over there. That Indian was born over there. They grew up in completely different cultures internally. They're entirely different people. But because we lumped them both together as India. And by the way, India was not a country until the English came along. It was the British that turned India into India. It didn't exist before then. It was a whole bunch of separate kingdoms that the British conquered and unified. But because they're on that patch of dirt, we go, we're not going to let that person in because that person shat on the ground. That's what I've got a problem with. The individual that shat on the ground, deal with them. 100% deal with them. And if dealing with them requires sending them home, yes, sure. If it's a case of an honor killing and dealing with them requires the death penalty, yes, sure. I'm all for law and order, but it has to be directed at the individual who is responsible, not at a group.
I agree with you in that sentiment, but where I think I might disagree with you is, yes, we deal with the individual, but this is a cultural issue. People who are coming here aren't assimilating. And we've just had both the Liberal Party and the Labor Party are working with India at the moment and talking about the India-Australian connection and how they want more people to come over. Isn't it interesting that lots of Indians want to come to Australia, but very few Australians want to go and migrate over to India? So it's not a two-way street, it's a one-way street. They're coming here. They have a population of what, 1.5 billion? Are we meant to home all these people? Is that what is that the current goal? And what I'm saying when it comes to immigration is it is too high. We've already talked about this. I don't want to keep going over the same points, but we're bringing in people who seem to not only understand how Australian life is, don't care. They don't care, right? And this defecation's one thing. The throwing away of the trash in the waterways is another thing. These are just handfuls of things that we've caught. How much is happening that we haven't caught? How much is going on that no one's talking about? That's my concern. If you want to come here, there should be a requirement to assimilate. And further to that, us as Australians should be able to have that conversation without being called a racist. I'm sorry. I don't care whether you're white or black. If you're publicly shitting on a nature strip, I have every right as an Australian citizen to call that out. That's not racism. It's not racism to condemn people who are publicly disposing of their rubbish in a creek. That's not racism. But the issue is this conversation always becomes a racist conversation because we're not allowed to discuss it.
Sure, and I feel like people are assuming that I'm defending things that I'm not defending. But should we be able to have the conversation? Yes, of course we should. Without being called a racist, yes, of course we should. But also, I believe in freedom of speech. So if someone wants to wrongly call you a racist or wrongly call me a racist, well, I believe they have the right to do that, and I have the right to tell them to fuck off. The issue here, though, is we turn around and we say, right, well, there's that Indian dude who's driving an Uber without the correct license, and there's that Indian dude who's shitting on the sidewalk, and there's that Indian dude who's taking trash into a creek. Okay, we see those people, all the rage bait gets picked up. This is why, by the way, some of these fake news outlets, the Noticer and other ones that just go for all this rage bait, this is why they do things like spreading the fake news that the person who made the video of the guy shitting on the footpath was arrested. Because they want to tap into that anger. They want to fuel that and feed that and turn this into a real division, not between people who don't shit on the footpath and people who do. That's where the division should be, right? But between anyone who's from Indian extraction and anyone who isn't. They want to try and drive that wedge deeper. So you've got a situation where I understand where you're coming from, but if you take that to its logical conclusion, well, we just end up in the rage bait category here, and we're lumping everyone together in the same basket and saying that everyone did the exact same thing. I remember when I went filming at King's Cross after the curfew came in, the 2 a.m. curfew, or the 11 p.m. curfew, 10 p.m. curfew was brought in after some people were king hit. They died in king hit attacks that happened at like 9:30, so the curfew wouldn't have even helped. I went and did a video there, and I remember the stench of urine around King's Cross, the main intersection in King's Cross in Sydney. And I paid attention. The people pissing on the sides, on the bricks on the side of the pubs, they were not Indian migrants. All right. The thing is, you see some drunk piece of white trash pissing on the bricks somewhere. You don't pull your camera out and start recording him. You see someone else doing it, maybe you do pull your camera out. So, and then it gets picked up and it becomes rage bait and it fuels this kind of fire. So what we're not seeing are the however many there are Indians who are out there working jobs, raising kids, making sure their kids get educated and fed and what have you, and getting on with life. Now, my concern is if you allow the correct anger at the people who are very much doing the wrong thing and do very much need to be dealt with, if you allow that to be blown out of proportion and to become a wedge of division between that entire group of people, you've just made a bunch of enemies inside your own country. People who actually were assimilating. The ones who were learning the language, well, they're lumped in with the ones that weren't. The ones that were paying their own way and paying taxes and educating their kids and doing all the right things, they've just been lumped in with all the people who weren't. And now you've literally created the very division that feeds the kind of racism, feeds the kind of reactions. We talk about this all the time, Carly. If you wanted to create a race war, this is how you would do it. Well, this is the other side of it, where there are people who do want to create a race war and they're feeding it. They're giving you the rage bait and they want you to take that bait. All I'm saying is don't take the bait. Aim your righteous anger at the individual responsible. Don't allow the fact that that person had a certain skin color or a certain religion to then cloud your view of everyone.
I'm just going to bring up this story as well, because this only happened, 6-7 months ago. This is the food delivery driver who urinated in the elevator in an apartments complex, and rightfully so. People are outraged about this. So it's certainly not a one-off. These are things, like I said, these are the stories that we hear. What about the stories that we don't hear? So my argument around this is also the conversation. As I've said, we can't have the conversation because it's deemed racist. But if we ourselves don't, like, I'm going to bring this back to chicken in the noodle aisle. We have accepted mediocrity. We are okay with our public spaces degrading and decaying. We don't care that someone, leaves their trolley aside. We don't care that someone leaves their rubbish on the ground. And this is just another manifestation of that. When people talk about what India looks like and what Bangladesh looks like, and it's overrun by waste, right? And you just need to go and look at any YouTube channel and they'll show you outside of certain areas, India has a huge issue with waste, with public defecation, and that's a cultural problem, right? And I don't even begin to know. I couldn't know how you fix that. I don't know how you fix that with 1.5 billion people. I don't know. But I do know that here in Australia, we have a way of doing things, and we need to, as Australians, not only hold the Indian migrants accountable and the Islamic migrants accountable for sure, but also we don't hold each other accountable. Like, Australians do not care. And we see this all the time. And, this comes across to the youth crime thing. It's easy to say it's all Africans. Well, no, it's a social contagion now. It's white kids. It was white kids that stole our car. And the problem is, whenever we want to have conversations around youth crime and, these kind of like pocket little things that we're talking about, whether it's the defecation or the urination, it always gets co-opted by race. And it's fatiguing and it's frustrating. It's cultural. This is a cultural problem. And it's cultural when we talk about youth crime because it's a social contagion. This is culture. We need to be able to have the conversation and take the race out of it. And if Australians can't sit there and call a spade and say, hey, our kids are just as bad, or hey, we also don't give a shit, then, and pointing the finger at a couple of Indians is a useless pursuit.
So this is another thing here. We look at India, we don't see the difference. Indians very much see the difference between each other. We look at Chinese, and we go, oh, you're Chinese. No. Are you Cantonese? Are you Mandarin? Which region are you from? Are you more from the Mongolian end? They are very racist internally against each other. And they see vast differences between their cultures internally against each other. So when we say, oh, Indians, which Indians do you mean? Because the point here being made by Channel Master is absolutely correct. You talk to a Brahmin and they will tell you the worst imaginable things about every other kind of Indian that isn't a Brahmin, right? Because they were the top caste. They were the ruling caste. They were the ones that literally shat on everybody else before the English came along, right? So again, when we're talking about cultures, well, which culture, which Indian culture are we talking about here? Because if you're talking about the Indian culture that shits on the street, I agree. We need to deal with that. We need to deal with those people. But if you're talking about the Indian culture that doesn't shit on the street, well, what's the problem? The problem is that you're not making a distinction between those two. You're not judging people as individuals.
I think there's
not you personally. I'm talking in the broader argument. People are failing to actually treat people as individuals.
I think people in the Western world also don't understand the caste system. I think a lot of people have no idea what that is. And, for those who might not be familiar, I'm not going to give you the quick, the full rundown, but a quick little summary is that in Hinduism, they believe that whatever caste you're born into, that's it. You cannot escape it. And it starts with D, Topher. What's the word for the people who are at the real bottom?
I don't remember.
It starts with D. It'll come to me. And so essentially those who are born into that and their children, that's it. There is no escaping it. And like, I'm going to be really crass just for the lack of a better way of describing this. Dilates, that's it. There it is. Is it that? Dilates? I think that's right. So these are people who will only ever live on the street. These are people who are poorer than poor. These people in the caste system are looked at as basically animals, right?
And they are the unclean, the Untermensch.
Yes, and that's their religion. So
yeah,
there's genuine complexities when it comes to India, but again, I boil this back down to we as a culture, like, Australia, people say Australians don't have a culture. Yes, we do. We absolutely have a culture.
We do. Yep.
And we should be able to protect it without the conversation being geared towards race. And that's why it's important to always bring it back to culture. But that's my 2 cents.
Yeah. So can I jump in here with we've got a super chat here, which makes a great point that cuts to the heart of this. I think this comment is it highlights what the answer is without actually intending to do so. Not dealing with them as groups becomes an issue when the groups begin rape gangs and they cover each other's tracks. True? Yes, absolutely true. But you're referring to the Pakistani rape gangs in London, right? Which definitely 100% a thing. They're real. We know they're real. They were covered up at official levels. But just imagine if we lived in some wonderful alternate universe where the allegedly first world UK had a functioning justice system. And when the first victims came forward and said, hey, we've been a victim of this behavior, it was actually properly investigated and prosecuted and punished. And it wasn't covered up by the police departments, and it wasn't covered up by the government, and it wasn't covered up by all of the apologists. Imagine that world where it was nipped in the bud in the 1980s when it started, instead of being allowed to fester for 40 years until finally it got forced onto the front burner by Tommy Robinson and a handful of others. Imagine a world with a functioning first world justice system in a first world country. Now, this is the point that I made time and time again, and I'll leave it here because we have hashed this out before, and we're not going to cover any new ground. But for anyone that's hearing this for the first time, your problems were not created by immigrants. Your problems were at the most that an immigrant is related to your problems is that your problems were created by a government failure to deal with immigrants who created problems. But actually, most of your problems were just created by government. Immigrants did not cause your inflation. Immigrants did not cause your housing shortage. Believe it or not, I've been through the numbers on this time and time again. We built enough houses. We have so much red tape and regulation that even a basic house costs double what it should. An $800,000 starter house on the outer suburbs of Melbourne should be a $400,000 starter house if you delete the cost of government. It's government that did that to you, not immigrants. It wasn't government that destroyed your energy reliability. Sorry, it wasn't immigrants, that destroyed your energy reliability and affordability. It's not immigrants who are doing any of these things that government is doing to you. The government wants us to blame immigrants. They want us to look at immigrants and say, oh, those people over there, as much as they're like, oh, no, we're on the side of the immigrants. Actually, they love it when you blame immigrants because it means you're not blaming the actual problem, which is them. The government's failure to enforce law and order is the reason why the rape gangs existed in the first place. If the government had dealt with it the first time, it wouldn't have been rape gangs. It would have been a rape.
Yeah.
Right? If at that point there were 20-year prison sentences followed by deportations, a very different message would have been sent, and that culture never would have developed. It's the exact same thing that's happening in Victoria right now. If the first home invasions had resulted in some people's heads getting kicked in and some proper jail sentences, there wouldn't have been the epidemic that we're seeing today. That's actually not a consequence of immigration. It's a consequence of a failed, uber compassionate first world justice system. The government did this to you. And here's my concern. In all of the outrage about immigrants and immigration, if we fix the immigration problem, right? If we stop immigration, zero immigration from now on, but we don't fix the government, we end up in poverty, living in a white ghetto. Now, I don't want to live in a ghetto no matter what color it is. I would like to live in a free and prosperous country. Thank you very much. Which means we have to fix government sooner or later. And people say, oh, well, we'll start by fixing the immigration problem and then we'll fix government. Well, firstly, as I just detailed, immigration is not the actual problem. It is at worst making some of the symptoms worse. But that's the worst of it. But also, if immigration was stopped tonight, most of the people showing up to protests would go home. All momentum would be gone. No further work would be done. No further reforms would take place. None of the other problems would get fixed. So congratulations, you now live in a white ghetto known as Australia. I hope you're happy with that outcome. Like, that's the reality that we're headed towards, because people are so fixated on the immigration issue, and they're not realizing that everything they're blaming on immigration was actually caused by failures of government, and yes, perhaps made worse by immigration. But fundamentally, if you don't fix government, you will not fix the problem.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a complicated discussion, and I see why people get heated, because again, it comes down to what you're exposed by, or exposed to, sorry. So for example, myself, I was exposed to youth crime, therefore obviously I'm biased towards it. And I think for a lot of people it comes down to, until it's directly impacting you specifically, you have no skin in the game, therefore you don't care. And now that, like I said, the Palestine protesters are now they're pro mass migration, and they're anti the immigration. I don't know. It's very confusing. I can't. Anyway, basically, Palestine's no longer the thing. Now they're all pro immigrants. And again, like, the conversation's always around race, and it's just so frustrating to me, because that's not the conversation. The conversation, as I say, is culture and assimilation. But anyway, I think we've driven that home.
No. I know. I need to slap a few people in the comments. I tell you off for telling our audience off, but I'm going to absolutely butt fuck a few people here, because this is absolutely ridiculous. Okay, you ran away to regional Australia because of immigration. Hey, fuck knob. I ran away to regional Australia to get out of Melbourne because of the Victorian government. This illustrates my point. You're pointing the finger at immigrants. It's government that fucked Victoria. Can you see that? Right? Next one, because there's a few. Hey, Topher, do you want to become like the UK with Sharia law in the street? No. And if we deal with the people who are breaking our laws, we won't. This is exactly my point with the rape gangs. We literally just went through this. Shit analogy, says Baz. We're not all fixated on just one thing. Well, I tell you what, the protests look pretty fixated on one thing. Topher won't live in India. No, but I have no problem with Indians coming here to become Australians. This is the thing. What you're mistaking is that me saying these people should be allowed to come in is me saying these people should be allowed to live however they want. Those are not the same things, right? And the failure to actually grasp that very important but somehow impossible little step seems to have missed a few people. Sorry, I'm a little fired up about this. This is really shitting me, guys. This is not hard. This is not complicated. Enforce our laws, hold criminals accountable, people respond to incentives. The reason we're getting shit behavior out of white and black and brown people is because we have shit incentives, and that's the government. Fix the incentives, fix the government, the behavior changes. The color of someone's skin makes zero fucking difference. Can we get over it, please?
I would argue it's the culture. I know I've said this 100 times, but I don't just mean their culture, our culture. I believe it's a culture of this progressivism that excuses poor behavior under the guise of oppression. Oh, we can't criticize these people because they have less than us. Well, yes, you fucking can. Yes, you fucking can. Yeah.
And you have a responsibility. You have a responsibility to hold those people accountable, to hold them to the same standard. And if we do that, these problems go away.
Yeah. Do you want to talk about Maduro, or do you want to save that for Wednesday?
Yeah, let's save it for Wednesday. We're 2 hours in, and I'm a little hot under the collar, so let's leave it there.
For once, you're spicy. Someone did say apparently it's that side of the screen that makes you spicy.
It's got to be. As soon as I came to this side of the screen, I got fired up.
Yeah, suicidal empathy. Guys, if you haven't yet, a book recommendation, I mentioned it last week, but Gad Saad's Parasitic Mind, he eloquently explains what I have been thinking and feeling for the last 5 years. And a lot of this comes down to the fact that, so few people are confident enough to speak up and call this out. And that's why I keep saying this is going to boil down to a race riot, because when you're not able to have these conversations, it becomes insipid and people get so hostile that it just has to bubble out, and it ends up becoming, something that it shouldn't be. I still stand by my claim, shame people. You should be shaming people.
100%,
that's it.
100%. Baz, I got no problem with being challenged. I enjoy it. But it does frustrate me when people are literally like, oh no, but, and it's like, no, we just went through that. Like, that's literally the thing that I just broke down. I'm sitting here going, am I spending too long on this? Is everyone bored? Do I need, like, I think I should probably move on. I've probably over-explained this 10 times already. Oh no, but that's what activates my almonds.
It's finally you. You're the one that's like getting all hot under your collar. I'm just enjoying. I think, I think when it comes to these discussions, again, I just said this, but it comes down to what you've been exposed to. But I think that there's a level of, what's the word I'm going to say? People are mourning a loss of something that we had, which was the Australia of yesteryear. And obviously we are always going to shift and change, and that's the nature of time. But I think, there's a lot of people who are yearning for a time that was. And I think there's a few things. Pre-COVID, things were very different. Back in the early 2000s, it was a little bit easier to get ahead, things like that. And so all of that context, and then throw these conversations in, that's why people are wanting to go back to these other times, because life across so many different pillars is unimaginably hard for everyone. And that's why these conversations become so heated. And if people weren't struggling, if there wasn't a cost of living crisis, if there wasn't a housing crisis, we wouldn't be having these conversations.
Okay. So I spend 10 minutes explaining things, and then Duncan the Crusader comes in, and in one sentence he says, individuals form groups. He's saying to nail the individuals before the group starts. I'm out, guys. I'm done. This guy in one sentence, one freaking sentence. That's it. Nail the individuals and the group won't form. The problem will never become the problem that we're dealing with today.
Or don't put chicken in the noodle aisle. Same shit.
Okay, fine. You're off the show then. I'm staying here. You're gone.
Well, now I get to be spicy. I'm in the spicy seat. No, and again, so you talked about on your video today that you're writing a book. Well, I am writing a book, and I'm actually like not to beat my own drum here. I'm really passionate about this because I believe that my purpose at the moment is to inspire people to be excellent again. To have accountability, to re-champion meritocracy, and strive for excellence, whatever that means for you. I'm not saying you all have to be astronauts or astrophysicists, right? Like whatever that means for you. And the reason that matters is so important. It's twofold. One, it empowers you as an individual, and also around us collectively, we're raising everyone together. You can't do that if you're perpetually a victim and you're always finger pointing at someone else's fault. So yes, there are always going to be external issues that cause troubles in your life, but this is what chicken noodle in the noodle aisle is all about. It's about saying, hey, I'm going to have personal accountability to not do shit that I know is simple, that no one will probably call me out on, but it starts the chain reaction. And that's what I think it is,
Yeah, and you're spot on with that. We talked about this before. You're absolutely spot on. But the nature of these issues is that they are multifaceted, and they are much bigger than any one analogy. There is no one analogy and no one metric that can kind of capture the whole thing. So the chicken in the noodle aisle captures one aspect of the apathy, the holding yourself to low standards. The thing we talked about early on, the demoralization, captures another aspect of it. The failure to uphold standards in law and order captures another aspect of it. And this is why these bigger sort of longer form conversations I think are really important, is because we do actually have the time to kind of go through different aspects of it and say, well, there's this side, and then there's that side, and then there's that side. And unfortunately, what we don't have in this conversation are the people that are actually making the decisions and causing the problems, the politicians, etc. These are the people that ultimately we need to have them. I don't know what you do. It's like, it's almost got to be like a Matrix style moment where you can just plug into the back of their head and just be like, let's download some common sense into your brain so that you can actually see, like, because it's not tricky, is it? It's not hard.
Or you just turn off the tap and stop the money. That'll change everyone's mind very quickly.
There's that.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know how you do that, but
well, there's that expression of instead of government being so big that it doesn't matter who's in charge, Liberal, Labor, Republican, Democrat, it's so big, it doesn't matter. They've got so much power, it's so out of touch, whatever. It's so big, it doesn't matter. Instead, let's try having a government that's so small that it doesn't matter who's in charge, because it doesn't make a difference. They can't do anything anyway. Let's try that one for a while and see how that goes. And I like
Yeah.
that idea.
All right. Well, that all being said, shall we say arrivederci for now?
Well, we will. And look, audience, I'm sorry. I do love you guys. I did get hot under the collar there, and more so than I should have. But this is like, guys,
It takes the pressure off me for once.
if we waste our energy on the wrong problem, then the people causing the real problem continue to cause the real problem. And this is why I get so fired up about all of what I do. Rarely do I let it spill over, but I did, and I'm sorry. But we have to focus our energy on the actual problem. And if you're fighting an entire racial group, then I'm sorry, there's a lot of people that you're fighting that aren't in the actual problem. It's the people in Canberra, it's the people in Spring Street, and it's the bubble that they have formed around them, the bureaucrats, the swamp, the consultants, the people sucking on the taxpayer teat. They are the enemy. They are the problem. Let's deal with them. And then we're going to discover that a lot of these other problems actually just disappear completely.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. Well,
right, let's get out of here.
Is it time to grift?
Oh, we can't leave without grifting. We would damage our reputation. My goodness.
Guys, if you want to learn about AI, if you're keen to upskill and you want to come join me in my masterclass, it is this coming Thursday. It's going to be awesome. And you can go and sign up for that at carlsjsoda.com. And there's quite a few people now. So jump on, book. That's my grift. That's all I got.
Okay, Carly, listen, that is an amateur grift. Amateur grift. Here.
I'm very passive tonight.
Here is Carly's grift. Ladies and gentlemen, let me grift on your behalf, Carly. Carly Soderstrom has a master's in AI and its involvement and the nexus between AI and the creative arts, and has started an incredible masterclass.
I believe.
The intersection. Oh, thank you. You are good at the wank. And she has nothing. I don't want anything from you. Nothing. She has distilled all of her wisdom down to 90 minutes of masterclass, where she will teach you how to use AI to buy back your time, learn how to harness AI to think faster, create smarter, and reclaim your most valuable asset, time. Have you ever said, I don't have time for that? Well, then this might be for you. This masterclass is for you if you are a creative, a freelancer, a coach, or an entrepreneur drowning in admin. If you're spending more time on emails, content, and operations than on your craft. Or if you're curious about AI but want clarity and not overwhelm, and you want to scale your income without burning out. This masterclass is not for you it's for everybody. Who am I kidding? It's for everybody. Guys, sign up. Carl knows what she's talking about. I have signed up. I'm a paid up member. I'm not getting any, there's no sweetheart deal here. I am paying. I'm a schmuck like the rest of you. Going to sit there and learn about AI from Carly because honestly, it's worth it. So I'll see you there on Thursday night. I am getting a 2-for-1 deal though, because my wife's going to be sitting next to me. So we're getting that information downloaded into 2 brains instead of 1, because I ain't no fool.
That's an extra zero on your next invoice.
Nah,
I will say, just on that, so the website that you showed, obviously graphic designer and somewhat of someone who can build a website, but I'm not a coder. Without AI, I couldn't have achieved that because it shortcutted so many difficulties that I face. So, sure, if I was a coder, I wouldn't have had trouble. I wasn't a coder. So thanks to AI, I was able to achieve this in a shorter time frame than I would have. So AI is pretty amazing.
And for those of you that are wondering, Carly works happily for chocolate chip cookies. No money needs to change hands, so just go and offer her some chocolate chip cookies. Now, let me just widen this a little bit because I am
partial to a chocolate chip cookie.
All right, so this is awesome. This is a lot of the new merch right here. When I get to it. Hang on, let me just actually do it.
He's familiarizing himself with his new website.
Yeah, I will say my new website, there's 1 or 2 menus that are different to my old one. All right, so this is the beginning of a new era. Apparently, it's the Angry Topher era. Apparently, we just got a glimpse. Angry Topher has emerged. We've got my classic DVD and my books and the Getting Your Head in the Game masterclass. This is the masterclass, that I talked about earlier. That is still available as a replay. $149 for that, all 6 weeks. It's more than 12 hours worth of material. But also, you can buy me a coffee. You can get stickers. We have stickers now. 4 packs of stickers, new T-shirts. This one's cool. This was literally the very first of the new products to sell. Very first one to walk out the door, at least the first one that I saw anyway, was one of these with the Toferfield cigar and the whiskey glass, and on the back it says "Think Free." That is one of numerous new designs. Let's go to, so we are still offering this one. The original is still on offer. The original Good People Break Bad Laws, that's the only original design that we still have. That is in the older style of tee, which is why it's discounted. Because I tell you what, the new tee, sorry, not tee, the older style of hoodie, the new hoodie, Carly, this hood itself. So understand, guys, the hood has the same material lining it. So it's a double thickness hood. And that same material on the outside is what you have against your head when you put it over your head. There's none of this sort of pilling and all that kind of nonsense that goes on the inside of a normal hoodie hood. Forget the design. Okay, I mean, yeah, Carly designs a good top. We know that. The hood on the hoodie, this will be your instant favorite hoodie. I promise you. So we got those. How am I doing, Carly?
I have been wearing the sample every single day, even though it doesn't fit me, but I don't care.
Yeah, it will be Carly excelled herself finding that particular garment. Forget the design. The garment is amazing. We have caps now. These are really cool. We got Too Much 1984, Not Enough 1776. So that design has been retired off the t-shirts, and it is now only available on the cap. We got the Toferfield monogram. We have a couple of street designs. So I keep seeing these two brands, NXP, Nina and Pasadena, and what's the other one that I keep seeing? Kiss Tracy, all over the place. And I said to Carly, can you get me a brand? Can you get me a design that looks kind of like a Nina and Pasadena type of design? And she's come up with this, and it's great. I love it. Makes sense, the nonsense. Good People Break Bad Laws, Think Free, and on the front, Toferfield, Think Free. And I could go on, but I won't. You guys get the idea. Toferfield.com, find the store, go and find it.
To answer this question, yes, there is all sizes from small to 5 extra large.
Yep, absolutely. So, guys, go and support Carly's AI Masterclass. I will see you there on Thursday. I will be there as a fully paid up member of the class. Go and check out the merch and my masterclass if you'd like to. But remember, I am releasing that again early next year, a whole new revised version done again from scratch. Check out the merch, check out the coffee button, and help us to keep doing what we do. Thanks, guys.
Until Wednesday. I feel like something's happening this week. I don't know what that is, but my spidey senses are a bit prickly. Is there something going on? I don't know. Like this whole Venezuela thing, it might be that, but for whatever reason, my little antennas are...
You realize that as a result of what you've just said, if there is a political assassination in America, Australia, the UK, New Zealand, anywhere, then they are going to be calling you up and saying, tell me about those spider senses. Who have you been hanging out with lately? What chat rooms are you spending time in online on the dark web?
I am the oracle. I tend to call these things, not because I have any skill. I just seem to just happen to do it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know. I just got this ominous feeling has overwhelmed me. So Wednesday will be an interesting chat. Guys, if you haven't...
Are you about to shed your lizard skin? Your lizard skin, are you about to shed?
I'm an Aquarian, so yes, by definition, we are aliens and we are not of this world.
Excellent. Well, that settles that then.
Yeah. Yeah, Wednesday night, guys, another Oddcast episode.
Excellent. Peace out. See you then. Bye.
Bye.
Oh, hang on. Don't hit the leave studio button. Hit the end stream.